Chapter 709. Andre abruptly raised his head. His eyes were as sharp as blades as he looked straight at Avery and said, "Don't tell me that you have nothing to do with that matter?" "That's right, I did it. Ever since you came here, I have no intention of denying it." Avery slowly nodded. He knew that Andre wouldn't come here just to taste wine with him. He also didn't think that given the influence of the House of Saint, they wouldn't be able to find out the truth if they investigated with all their might. "Then what do you mean when you say that you don't know?" Andre was rather stunned to hear Avery admit to it. "I don't know if that youngster is dead or alive because he escaped from my hands." Avery gulped down the wine in his cup in one gulp and put on a bitter smile. "WH. What?" Andre raised his voice and stared at Avery. "Are you sure you are not joking? As the chief of the Fifth Corps, I know very well how strong you are. Brian is but a puny low god. You should have either captured him alive or killed him. How could there be a third possibility?" Facing Andre's question, Avery's smile became even more bitter. He shook his head and said, "It's up to you whether you want to believe it or not. That brat really escaped from me. I couldn't tell what kind of power he used, but I gave him a heavy blow. Logically speaking, he shouldn't have survived. However, I couldn't find his corpse, so I said, 'I don't know.'" Andre's face was cloudy and cloudy. He kept staring at Avery as though he wanted to see if Avery was lying. After a long while, Andre let out a soft laugh and said, "I find it hard to believe that he could escape from your hands. But even if you were lying, you wouldn't make up such an unconvincing lie. This is going to be a little troublesome. He's just a mere pharmacist. Don't tell me that Lord Andre will really pursue the matter because of his death?" Avery wasn't worried at all. He shrugged and continued to pour himself more wine. "If he didn't help Carmelita, I wouldn't care even if you killed 100 of him." Andre let out a cold groan and continued, "But this fella has the highest chance of helping Carmelita change her current situation. Not only her appearance, but also her eccentric temperament. As a member of the House of Saint, I will naturally treat this matter with caution. The last time I talked to you, I was hoping that you could turn a big problem into a small one. I didn't expect that you wouldn't even give me face. Avery, has the House of Lavers become so powerful that it can go against our House of Saint? I wouldn't dare." Avery lowered his head and said in a deep voice, "If he didn't blow up 3 of my shops, I wouldn't have resorted to such drastic measures. Last time, I gave the order, and they didn't look for trouble with that kid. We can't be blamed for this." Andre stared at Avery, who had lowered his stance. He frowned slightly and said meaningfully, "I think you didn't come here just to avenge the 3 energy shops, right? I know that Brian is a very outstanding apothecary. I think the reason why you have to do it yourself is because of the things in Brian's mind. You don't want anyone else to have those things, so you have to do it yourself, right?" Upon hearing those words, Avery suddenly turned silent and did not say another word. The two of them were old acquaintances and knew each other's temperament very well. Just like how Avery knew why Andre was there, Andre also knew that Avery only needed to nod his head and his subordinates would take care of a mere low god. As the chief of the Fifth Corps Divine Guard, Avery was not going to just kill a low god. "Forget it. Now that things have come to this, I will no longer pursue your previous actions." Andre stared at Avery for a moment, and let out a soft sigh. Andre stared at Avery for a moment, and let out a soft sigh. Then, his left eye gradually turned dark purple. In an instant, he had turned into a cold and emotionless person. Andre looked at Avery with his bizarre left eye and softly said, "If Brian is dead, I will let this matter rest. But if he is still alive and you dare to kill him, don't blame me for not showing mercy." Avery's heart skipped a beat when he saw that Andre's left eye had turned dark purple. He immediately understood that Andre's warning this time was no trivial matter. It wasn't as simple as a casual greeting like the last time. After weighing the pros and cons, Avery nodded and said, "I understand. That's good. Don't worry. Even if Brian is still alive, he won't pose any threat to your House of Lavers. He doesn't have the strength to harm any of your family members. You can rest assured, Andre softly acknowledged. He stood up from Avery's chair and said, "All right, it's getting late. I'll be taking my leave." Upon finishing those words, Andre took to the air and left. After Andre disappeared, a smile appeared on Avery's face again. His body swayed, and the next moment, he appeared in the shadows of the fifth core secret chamber. He opened his mouth and ordered, "Number 4, go home and inform them that the confinement order for those 2 good-for-nothings can be lifted." "Yes, sir." A cold and indifferent voice, identical to Number 3's, replied from the darkness. In the laver's residence, Cage and Eve, who had been imprisoned in the laver's residence for more than 3 months, cheered when they heard that they had regained their freedom. For Cage and Eve, who were used to wandering around, it was terrible for them to be locked up for 3 months and not be able to take a step out of the family for 3 months. "Brother, that youngster has been missing for 3 months. It seems that he's done for. Since Father has said that we can leave the House of Lavers, it means that the House of Saint has done its job." "Ha, I knew it. Those who go against our House of Lavers will never have a good ending," Eve said to Cage smilingly. She was in a great mood. "All right, from today onwards, we cannot talk about that youngster in front of outsiders, lest some people get suspicious and bring unnecessary trouble to Father," Cage reprimanded Eve before he stretched his body comfortably. He said, "It's been a long time since I left the Laver's residence. Let's go and have some fun at Fort Hassel. The sea fruits there are just about ripe in this season. It's been a long time since I've tasted those delicacies." "That's right. Fort Hassel has the most beautiful scenery during this season. Ha, let's go and have some fun there." Eve immediately agreed. After making up their minds, the siblings immediately packed up and left the City of Shadows with a small team of family clan divine guards. They headed straight for Fort Hassel that was under the control of the Laver's residence. Outside the City of Shadows, Han Shaw, who was hiding in a hidden underground cave, suddenly opened his eyes from his meditation. With a cold face he murmured, "So we've finally left the Laver's residence. Iverson, I can't kill you for the time being. But I'm more than happy to help you get rid of those troublemaking sons and daughters of yours. How will you thank me when the time comes?" Hee. After staying in the underground cave for 3 months and enduring 7 days of excruciating pain, the condition of Han Shou's injuries had stabilized. After spending more than a month recuperating with medicinal pellets, Han Shou's meridians and bones were reconnected and his serious injuries were finally healed. After entering the Omen realm, Han Shou's demonic body had become even more tenacious and durable due to cultivating the invincible Omen body. Therefore, Han Shou was able to fully recover from his injuries in just 3 months after using the blood disassembly. After recovering from his injuries, Han Shou was in no hurry to leave the underground cave. He repeatedly evaded the scouting divine guards and members of large family clans and hid himself. He dared not show his face in the City of Shadows. After learning that his opponent was Avery, Han Shou no longer had the intention to confront the Laver's residence. Besides, he was worried that once his whereabouts were exposed, Avery would immediately find him and deal him a fatal blow. With his previous experience, Han Shou believed that if Avery were to strike this time, Han Shou wouldn't even have the chance to use the demonic blood disassembly. Therefore, Han Shou had been hiding and observing the situation of the Laver's residence with his demon generals. He was like a venomous snake hiding in the dark, waiting for the best opportunity for revenge. One day, Han Shou immediately noticed the departure of Cage and Eve. He knew that the opportunity he had been patiently waiting for had finally arrived. The journey from the City of Shadows to Fort Hassel took approximately 7 days. Cage and Eve rode on an airship with a team of divine guards from the Laver's residence. Han Shou knew that this was not the time to strike. He had been following behind the airship using his demon generals while he exited the underground cave and stealthily made his way to Fort Hassel. Using the demon generals in the cauldron of myriad demon, Han Shou was able to observe every movement within a 10-mile radius. He effortlessly evaded any divine guards that came to search for him. He walked out of the mountain range without the slightest hindrance, and stealthily made his way to Fort Hassel. On the morning of the 8th day, Han Shu appeared in a vast and boundless ocean north of Fort Hassel. This ocean region named Neptune's Tier was one of the most beautiful places in the vicinity of the City of Shadows. Every year during this season, the plants in the depths of the ocean would bloom with wondrous flowers. At first glance, those flowers would look as though they were floating in the middle of the ocean. As the sea breeze blew, many petals would scatter. The entire ocean would be filled with an enchanting fragrance and magnificent scenery. Among the sea flowers, there would be a type of large flower bud that would produce a type of sea fruit. The fruit was very sweet and tasty. To gluttons, the sea fruit was an extremely tempting delicacy. Therefore, every year during this season, the Neptune's Tier would attract many youngsters from the City of Shadows to come and sightsee. This time was no exception. By the time Han Shu arrived at this ocean region, after his demon generals had spread out, he discovered that there were many young men and women on various small islands in the ocean region. Cage and Eve were on one of the islands that was filled with lush trees and exquisite leisure houses. Colorful sea flowers were blooming all around the island. The scenery was very beautiful. Fort Hassel was the territory of the Lavers family. As the young master and young lady of the family, it was only natural that Cage and Eve found the best island to enjoy the beautiful scenery of the Neptune's Tier. For 3 days in a row, Cage and Eve stayed on the island. The group of divine guards from the Lavers family never left the island. Han Shu could not find an opportunity to attack them. Until today, when Cage and Eve had grown tired of enjoying everything on the island. They planned to go for a swim in the deep waters of the sea flowers and pick some ripened sea fruits. As this was the territory of the Lavers family, the two did not think too much about it. They did not allow the divine guards to follow them. "Brother, let's split up. Let's see who can pick the biggest sea fruits." Eve was in a great mood. Following Han Shu's death, she had forgotten all the pain that Han Shu had brought to her. She had devoted herself to the embrace of the ocean. "Sure," Cage replied casually. He was thinking about harvesting more sea fruits so that when he returned to the City of Shadows, he could use the sea fruits to win a certain someone's affection. The young master and young lady of the Lavers family, one in the east and the other in the west, headed in opposite directions of the sea flowers. Eve landed gracefully in the middle of the sea flowers. For some reason, she couldn't help but recall Tung Fei, whom she once admired. She couldn't help but recall Tung Fei's carefree and gentle demeanor. She couldn't help but curse. "That wretched fella, he can't be relied on at crucial moments. Why would I miss him?" Another person appeared in Eve's mind. Her mood suddenly turned for the worse. She cursed in a low voice. "Ever since I was young, no one has ever dared to slap my face like that. You deserve to die." "Huh?" Eve shook her head and looked at the person in front of her in puzzlement. She mumbled to herself. "Why would I think of him? And why hasn't he disappeared from my mind? Miss Eve, thank you for remembering me, hee hee." Han Shu, who was standing in front of Eve, first covered the surrounding waters with the banner of hallucination before he said to Eve with a warm smile. "Why can you still talk? Hallucination. I'm hallucinating. It seems that he has really hurt me. Damn it," Eve mumbled to herself as she looked at Han Shu. "Yes, it's all an illusion. You won't feel any pain when you die." Han Shu's smile turned cold. The surroundings changed. Layers of illusions suddenly erupted from the banner of hallucination. Many gods who were killed by Eve's bad temper suddenly came back to life. They were dragging their own intestines in their hands. Their bodies were rotting, and some were gnawing on their arms. "Don't come over! Don't come over!" Eve suddenly screamed shrilly. She was terrified by the horrifying scenes around her. She screamed and cried hysterically. You've killed quite a lot of people. Hee hee, you deserve to die." Han Shu sneered. He was not in a hurry to take Eve's life. Instead, he looked at Eve, who was screaming and screaming miserably in the illusions, and slowly tortured her. It was only when Eve was completely scared out of her wits and her mind was completely taken over by the illusions that Han Shu finally made his move. With a slash of the demonic blades, Eve's head flew into the air. Fresh blood sprayed on the seaweed, creating a bewitchingly beautiful scene. Eve's divine soul was collected by Han Shuo's cauldron spirit. She would soon become a new demon general in the cauldron of myriad demon, forever under Han Shuo's control. Your strength is decent, but it's a pity that you haven't really experienced any major setbacks. Your willpower is too weak to even resist the illusions of the banner of hallucination. It seems that although the strength of these disciples of major family clans is high, they are not as strong as they used to be. Han Shuo mumbled to himself. He put away the banner of hallucination, dove into the ocean, and stealthily crept towards Cage. Back in the underground world of Profound Continent, Downa, Bolton, and the others had also fallen into the illusions. Similarly, Downa and the others who possessed terrifying strength were also affected by the illusions. Ever since then, Han Shuo realized that although the disciples of major family clans on Elysium might possess greater strength than him, they were not as experienced as him. Without constantly wandering between life and death, they would not be able to develop an unwavering willpower, which would make them susceptible to the illusions. Eve had once again confirmed Han Shuo's guess. Soon enough, Han Shuo arrived at Cage's side. Compared to his younger sister Eve, Cage's temperament was considerably more tenacious. He did not retreat in a panic the moment he saw the illusions, but immediately launched a frenzied attack. Han Shuo could tell that Cage was similarly affected by the illusions. He couldn't tell the difference between illusions and reality at all. Even if Han Shuo didn't use the energy of his main body, he could still kill Cage, who was attacking randomly with his two avatars and the banner of hallucination. Illusions were illusions after all. No matter how ferocious or how powerful Cage's attacks were, the illusions would not vanish. Without a physical existence, one could only rely on one's willpower and a heart as hard as a boulder to discern the minutest details. It was obvious that Cage wasn't at that level. Therefore, Han Shuo didn't attack at all. He watched as Cage consumed his divine energy in the illusions. He was using this kind of frenzied attack to conceal the fear in his heart. However, what was the use of this? Get lost. All of you, get lost. I can kill you all again. Cage subconsciously shouted to boost his courage as he continued his frenzied attack. Gradually, Cage felt that his attacks were getting heavier and heavier. His mind was getting muddled. It was only then that Cage seemed to realize something. But it was already too late. It was at this moment that Han Shuo finally made his move. Han Shuo suddenly closed in on Cage. Disregarding Cage's feeble counterattack, Han Shuo blasted Cage's head with all his might. Invincible Omen body withstood 30 waves of Cage's attacks while Han Shuo's energy blasted into Cage's head. Bang! Cage's entire head exploded. Blood and brain matter sprayed everywhere. Cauldron spirit collected Cage's divine soul. Han Shuo erased all traces of him from Cage's body. Satisfied, Han Shuo left the scene. Han Shuo also conveniently put away the banner of hallucination. Avery's son and daughter of the Lavers family had both died at the hands of Han Shuo. Han Shuo didn't know if Avery would find out that he was the culprit, but he wasn't afraid. Han Shuo had already regarded Avery as his greatest enemy at present. He was prepared to fight against Avery for a long time. The only thing that made Han Shuo feel a bit regretful was that his relationship with Donna would never be as friendly as it had been in the past from today onwards. Perhaps one day, the two of them would be at loggerheads with each other. This was something that Han Shuo had always wanted to avoid, but had never been able to avoid. Chapter 710 at the fifth core of the City of Shadows. A panic-stricken divine guard hastily rushed to the room where Avery handled administrative affairs. He immediately kowtowed and said, My lord, something has happened. Avery did not even raise his head. He softly grunted and continued to read through the documents in his hand. He asked in an indifferent voice, What is it? Young Master Cage and Miss Eve, they. The divine guard stuttered as though he didn't dare to finish his sentence. Avery bunched his brows and put down the document in his hand. He softly groaned and said, Did those two stir up some trouble again? Who did they offend? Could it be the House of Saint again? Avery asked self-righteously. He was greatly angered. No, no! The Divine Guard shook his head. Avery heaved a sigh of relief and softly exhaled. He then mumbled to himself. That's good. As long as it's not the House of Saint, it's not a big deal. Andre had a serious discussion with me the last time. If those two bastards offended the House of Saint again, things would get a little tricky. No, no, young master and miss did not offend anyone. They were. The Divine Guard found it extremely difficult to muster up the courage to say those two words aloud to Avery. What about them? Did the local family clans beat them up? Humph, Fort Hassel belongs to our House of Lavers. How could there be someone so audacious as to do that? Avery coldly groaned. No. Young master and young lady were killed in Fort Hassel. The Divine Guard gnashed his teeth and finally told Hans Shaw the truth of how the two were killed. Avery was stunned. His eyes were blank as though he couldn't digest the grievous news for a moment. After a long while, Avery grabbed the Divine Guard's neck and threw him into the air. He howled. What did you say? Say it again. Cough, cough. Spare me, my lord. Spare me, my lord. According to news from Fort Saint, young Master Cage and Miss Eve were killed while plucking sea fruits near the Neptune's Tear. Spare me, my lord! The Divine Guard pleaded loudly. He found it hard to breathe. No! Avery roared at the sky. His voice reverberated throughout the entire Fifth Corps. A silhouette suddenly flew out from the Fifth Corps and dashed towards the outskirts of the City of Shadows. He did not even bother to register when he passed through the city gates. He vanished in the blink of an eye. 2 days later, on the island where Cage and Eve stayed in the Sea God's Tear, there were 2 corpses in front of Avery. He stared blankly at Cage and Eve's corpses. Cage's entire head was shattered, and only his body could be identified. As for Eve, her head was cut off and her neck was sewn back together with silk thread. Avery only had a son and a daughter. His wife had passed away a long time ago. Avery doted on Cage and Eve very much, so he would tolerate any mistakes they made. Although he would teach them a harsh lesson every time, if they were bullied, he would always find a way to make them pay. To Avery, his son and daughter were the most important things to him. And today, their lifeless corpses were placed in front of him. The pain was so excruciating that he felt like he was suffocating. Haven't you discovered any clues? Avery asked calmly as he looked at the 2 corpses. Forgive us, my lord, forgive us, my lord. A group of Divine Guards lined up in a row and knelt before Avery, begging for mercy. Then there is no value in your lives anymore. Avery's voice was as calm as ever. Upon hearing those words, the faces of those Divine Guards turned ashen. Some of them immediately took to the air in an attempt to escape from Avery's murderous hands. A series of phantoms flew out from Avery's body. Those phantoms each locked onto one of the Divine Guards. A wave of blood-curdling screams filled the air around Avery, followed by a rain of blood and corpses. Not a single one of the Divine Guards who accompanied Cage and Eve to Fort Hassel could escape from Avery's wrath. Not a single one of them even had an intact corpse. Who could it be? Who could it be? Avery mumbled to himself amidst the corpses on the ground, ignoring the pungent smell of blood. Could it be that youngster? He only has low god strength. Even if it was a sneak attack, he shouldn't have been a match for Cage and Eve, especially Cage, who was even more cautious. There was no way he would be killed by a low god. So who could it be? Have I offended anyone recently? Avery mumbled to himself. After a while, his brows bunched and his face suddenly turned sinister. He clenched his teeth and shouted, Carmelita has been searching for that youngster. Since Andre knows that it's me, does that mean that she knows as well? That ugly monster is the craziest. She has a close relationship with that youngster. Eve even humiliated her. Could it be her? It should be her. Number 3! Avery softly called out. Under the scorching sun, Avery's shadow responded. Yes, sir. Investigate Carmelita's recent movements and keep a close eye on her. If she does anything out of the ordinary, report to me immediately, Avery instructed. Yes, sir. Shortly after, a dark shadow escaped from Avery's shadow under the scorching sun. Like an illusory illusion, it disappeared into the beautiful scenery of lush sea flowers in the distance. Northwest of Fort Hassel, in the green fire swamp, Han Sho was hiding in the lush foliage of a large tree. The green fire swamp was an enormous swamp that covered an area of thousands of miles. Faint green flames would burn in the swamp all year round, hence the name Green Fire. From Han Sho's observation, it was because natural gas existed in the swamp. The green flames were natural gas that could be used up. However, the natural gas here was obviously different from what Han Sho knew. It was more flammable and could last longer. That was why the green flames in the swamp never dissipated all year round. In the Green Fire Swamp, there were many magical beasts with low intelligence but astonishing strength. There were also some alien races with high intelligence, such as the eagle-bodied winged beings and the traps that Han Sho had seen in the Abyss Realm. They often appeared in the Green Fire Swamp. Other than the swamp and the green flames that could be seen everywhere, there were also some mountains and rivers. Those mountains and rivers had been burnt red by the green flames all year round. Some of the mountains and rivers produced many beautiful energy crystals. Those crystals had special functions and attracted many gods to come and mine them. Not only were there energy ores, but there were also many medicinal ingredients, and even poisonous plants that pharmacists needed. Therefore, the Green Fire Swamp was not a peaceful place. The energy crystals and medicinal ingredients in the swamp had attracted many gods from the surrounding forts and small towns to mine them. Naturally, some people with ulterior motives would also sneak into the Green Fire Swamp. They weren't there to mine ores or collect medicinal ingredients, but to devour people. They were god hunters. Han Sho had come to the Green Fire Swamp purely by chance. After killing Cage and Eve, Han Sho discovered that all the divine guards on the island had gone mad. The divine guards of Fort Hassel, upon receiving the news, had also been mobilized. They started searching for any suspicious people from Fort Hassel. Han Sho believed that Avery would immediately figure out who killed Cage and Eve as soon as those divine guards discovered his presence. Therefore, Han Sho had no choice but to retreat. The 1,000-mile swamp was quite a distance away from Fort Hassel. It was densely forested and sparsely populated. It was the perfect place for Han Sho to hide. When he arrived at the Green Fire Swamp and discovered through his demon generals that a pharmacist who was harvesting medicinal ingredients had been devoured by a god hunter, Han Sho was shocked at first. But after observing for a while, he discovered that the god hunters were either alone or in small groups. Furthermore, they didn't possess particularly powerful strength. Han Sho was relieved. Not only was he relieved, but Han Sho was also overjoyed. He started to change his role and think of himself as a hunter. And the prey was none other than the god hunters who preyed on others. After experiencing Avery's assassination attempt, Han Sho had completely sobered up. He realized that his dream of owning a family clan in the City of Shadows was nothing more than a fantasy. If he wanted to truly gain a foothold in the City of Shadows, just having wealth and the support of Carmelita and the House of Saint was far from enough. Only when he became truly powerful and possessed power that no family clan would dare to belittle, could he protect his wealth and gain a foothold in the City of Shadows. Otherwise, it would all be an illusion. After understanding this, Han Sho made raising his own strength the most pressing matter at the moment. Raising one's demonic cultivation realm often required a suitable opportunity, or some sort of fortuitous encounter. It was very difficult to raise one's strength with just hard work and a moment's effort. However, Han Sho's two avatars were different. This was especially true for his avatar of death. As it had previously absorbed the divine soul of a mid-god, as long as this avatar could accumulate sufficient divine energy, it would only be a matter of course for it to make a breakthrough. When all the divine essences of death had been used up, the fastest way to continue increasing his divine energy was to kill a cultivator of the same energy. Han Sho had already overcome the negative effects of devouring energy and therefore, he was not worried that he would be unable to extricate himself. It would be a little difficult for Han Shaw to overcome the mental barrier of killing someone whom he had no grudge against. But it was a different story when it came to god hunters. Therefore, when Han Shaw discovered that there were a small number of god hunters in Greenfire Swamp, not only did he not leave immediately, he was secretly delighted. With the help of his demon generals, Han Shaw had become the most terrifying hunter in Greenfire Swamp. 2 mid-god god hunters cultivating in the energy of death became Han Shaw's first targets. After hiding for 3 days, Han Shaw finally found the most opportune moment. He was ready to strike. The intruders were a man and a woman. The man appeared to be in his early 30s while the woman was slightly older, around 40 years old. Of course, that was only Han Shaw. By the standards of Earth and Profound Continent, the two's actual ages were definitely much higher than that. The funny thing was that the man and the woman were also hiding in the dark, silently observing a cave that had been scorched red by green flames. They seemed to be waiting for some prey, but little did they know that Han Shaw had already treated them as his prey. Han Shaw had been observing the man and the woman for 3 days. Both of them cultivated in the energy of death. The woman was a mid-stage mid-god while the man was an early-stage mid-god. Over the course of 3 days, the two had attacked twice and successfully devoured an early-stage low-god of death and a mid-stage low-god of death mining energy ores. "Thalia, are you sure?" the man asked in a low voice. "Don't doubt my judgment. The energy ripples on that little girl's body are too intense. She must have a high god artifact on her. If we can get that divine artifact, we'll be rich." The woman called Thalia licked the corner of her mouth, her eyes filled with greed and cruelty. "A high god divine weapon? Hee hee. That's something that can make us rich." The man laughed softly before he suddenly asked. "Right, Thalia, how old is that little girl? What does she look like? You know me, hee hee, damn it, Ridgersy, I don't care how you did it. Just get that high god divine weapon first. If you interfere with my business, I won't show you any mercy." Thalia cursed in a low voice. The two of them waited for a long time. Suddenly, a beautiful little girl walked out of the cave. That little girl looked to be around 10 years old. She had purple hair that draped over her shoulders, and her purple eyes were filled with a cold light. Her skin was tender and white, like a doll. But the cold aura around her was too strong, so she didn't look cute. Instead, she gave off a feeling of being unapproachable. When the man named Ridgersy saw such a beautiful little girl walking out of the cave, his breathing suddenly became rapid. He blushed and softly exclaimed, "So beautiful! Very good! Very good! I like it! Attack! Her guards have yet to come out. Now is the best time to capture her." Thalia was also panting. However, it was obvious that she was panting because of the divine weapon in the little girl's hand. The two suddenly shot out from the dark like 2 eerie rays of light. The domain of divinity of death abruptly shrouded the little girl and rushed to grab her. "Oh no, they're too fast!" Han Shaw had been observing the two for 3 days. Han Shaw did not poke his nose into the two's business when they killed 2 people. Instead, through those 2 observations, he had figured out the two's true strength. This time, when he saw a beautiful little girl about to be killed, he finally couldn't help but want to save her. However, Han Shaw did not expect that the two would act so quickly. They had just met and immediately attacked. However, what happened next was even more unexpected to Han Shaw. A splendid curtain of light suddenly blossomed from the little girl's body. In an instant, a strange force field suddenly erupted. The curtain of light was like a whirlpool that could crush everything. It directly pulled Thalia and the man into it. Even Han Shaw did not see clearly what happened before the two were reduced to a bloody mess that scattered on the ground. What a beautiful scene! The little girl was standing in the pool of blood. Her body was also drenched in blood. A gentle smile suddenly blossomed on her cold face. She mumbled to herself, "It seems that there's another person." Chapter 7:11. At the next moment, Han Shaw, who was hiding in the dark, suddenly felt as though he was shrouded by a peculiar force field. His body felt as though he had sunk into a muddy swamp. A constantly rotating energy curled around him, giving him a feeling that he couldn't break free from it. It was also at this moment that the little girl, who was covered in blood, turned her ice-cold purple eyes towards Han Shuo's hiding place, among the lush leaves of a large tree. The little girl's body was also stained with scarlet blood. The scarlet blood stains on her cute little dress were like blooming red flowers. But when contrasted with the ice-cold aura emanating from her body, she gave off a very frightening feeling. Han Shuo, who was carefully observing the situation below, had absolutely no idea what energy the little girl was using. The only thing he could be sure of was that she wasn't using any of the 12 fundamental energies. 2 mid-gods were shredded to pieces in an instant. But not only was the little girl not afraid, she even seemed to be enjoying it. This made Han Shuo feel that she was rather strange. "Big brother, there are caterpillars in the leaves." The little girl's purple eyes suddenly lit up. It was as though she could see through all the obstacles between the two of them. Her voice was cold and sweet. Han Shuo's heart sank. He knew that his whereabouts had been completely exposed. Han Shuo, who couldn't estimate the little girl's strength, pondered for a moment before he flew down from the leaves with a bitter smile. He maintained a certain distance from her, and immediately said, "I'm not with them. Don't misunderstand. Not with them? Hulu. What's the difference? You saw me kill them." The little girl blinked and looked at Han Shuo innocently. But her words were as cold as ice. "Are you planning to kill me?" Han Shuo stared blankly for a moment before he put on a faint smile. "Yes, I'm sorry." The little girl bowed slightly, giving Han Shuo an apologetic salute. Then, she floated towards Han Shuo. A strange force field suddenly enveloped the area. This force field was completely different from a divinity's domain. It did not change the elemental distribution in this space at all. Instead, it formed many vortexes that were hard to see with the naked eye. These vortexes contained a strange power that seemed to be able to grind everything around them to pieces. As soon as the force field was formed, Han Shuo's keen divine sense immediately sensed the sudden changes in the surrounding space. The surrounding vortexes were hard to see with the naked eye, but Han Shuo relied on his divine sense's astonishing ability to sense all things, so he could clearly grasp their location and the changes that were happening. The little girl was not affected by any of the whirlpools at all. When she flew towards Han Shuo, her body passed through the whirlpools unscathed. However, Han Shuo knew that those whirlpools contained extremely terrifying energy. The sudden disintegration of the 2 mid-gods proved the lethality of the whirlpools. The force field was still there. The whirlpools were spinning and moving at high speed. Their target, Han Shuo, was getting tighter and tighter. Han Shuo quietly stared at the little girl who was slowly approaching him. When he discovered that the area he could move was getting smaller and smaller, he slightly bunched his brows. Then, Han Shuo's body turned into afterimages as he moved at high speed within a very small area. His body either elongated or shrunk. He had utilized the body metamorphosis to the extreme and forced his way out of the space that was constantly being compressed. Han Shuo gently took a deep breath and adjusted his state of mind to its peak. He stood in the pool of blood where the little girl was. He casually absorbed the divine souls of the 2 mid-gods that had yet to dissipate into Cauldron Spirit. Then he looked at the little girl who was a little surprised and coldly said, "We will mind our own business. If you dare to attack again, I will not rest until you are dead." That little girl didn't seem to expect that Han Shuo would be able to easily escape from the energy field she created. When she looked at Han Shuo again, she suddenly felt that he was covered by a layer of mysterious veil. Her brows were slightly creased, as though she was considering whether she should attack again. After a while, she lightly nodded and said in a cold voice, "There is an unknown energy in your body. It is a kind of energy that I have never seen before. You may leave. We will mind our own business." Han Shuo was startled when he heard those words. He did not expect that this little girl could see through the demonic arts he was concealing with just a glance. Han Shuo was even more afraid to act blindly without thinking. Master, stay away from this little girl. She is even more terrifying than that guy who attacked you last time. Cauldron Spirit's voice suddenly sounded in Han Shuo's consciousness. As soon as Cauldron Spirit's voice sounded, Han Shuo's expression remained the same. However, his heart was in turmoil. Han Shuo took a deep look at the little girl and did not say anything else. He nodded and concealed himself in the shadows. He immediately vanished from that place. That little girl, she is even more terrifying than Avery? Han Shuo asked Cauldron Spirit. The astonishment in his heart had yet to subside after leaving that area. Yes, I can infer that from her biomagnetic field. Moreover, that little girl has a strange thing in her body. It is the so-called divine weapon of this universe. That divine weapon is not bad, but its energy is also very strange, Cauldron Spirit explained to Han Shuo after a moment of silence. The Cauldron of Myriad Demon was a supreme demonic treasure. As the soul of the Cauldron of Myriad Demon, the Cauldron Spirit still had the arrogance to disregard any demonic treasure despite having exhausted all the demon generals in the Cauldron. If even the Cauldron Spirit said that the divine weapon was not bad, Han Shuo believed that the divine weapon in the little girl's body must be extraordinary. Han Shuo immediately made up his mind not to provoke her. An expert with unfathomable strength and a high possibility of possessing a terrifying divine weapon wasn't someone he should pay too much attention to at this time. Especially since the two of them had no enmity, there was even less need for Han Shuo to look for trouble. After the first two targets were killed by the little girl, Han Shuo had no choice but to search for new targets. 2 days later, Han Shuo once again set his sights on an early-stage mid-god god hunter who cultivated in the energy of death. This time, Han Shuo did not run into any trouble. Given Han Shuo's current strength in demonic arts, and the large area coverage of the Cauldron Spirit's demon generals, his sudden sneak attack was not something that the god hunter could defend against. Han Shuo once again experienced the wonderful feeling of having the divine energy of death flow from the god hunter's body to his own. Although two people of the same energy could devour each other, the devourer could not obtain all of the divine energy in the other party's body. In fact, the devourer could only obtain about 10% of the divine energy in the other party's body, or even less. After all, the divine energy that others painstakingly cultivated belonged to them. A portion of that divine energy would forever remain in the cultivator's body, mixing with the skin, flesh, bones, and internal organs. It was not something that could be obtained by devouring. In the process of devouring, the divine energy of the one being devoured would be greatly drained. No matter how skilled the devourer was, when the other party was powerless and could only be devoured, it would mean that the devourer could no longer control the divine energy in his body. While a portion of the divine energy would flow into the devourer's body, a larger portion would flow out from the 7 orifices of the body, the hair, and even every pore of the devourer's body. This was something that no one could stop. In the end, the devourer would have to remove the impurities from the divine energy and fuse it with his or her own divine energy. As such, if a devourer devoured a god of the same level, he or she would at most obtain 1/10 of the divine energy in the other party's body. Therefore, Han Shuo only obtained less than 10% of the divine energy in the early-stage mid-god's body. However, the other party was, after all, a mid-god. Just 10% of the divine energy was enough for a low god like Han Shuo to make a breakthrough. Furthermore, Han Shuo's avatar possessed the divine soul of a mid-god. Therefore, the breakthrough happened very quickly. When the avatar discovered that the divine energy was so dense that it was about to undergo a qualitative change, it immediately entered the Cauldron of Myriad Demon and entered a long period of cultivation. Meanwhile, Han Shuo's main body continued to search for other targets, god hunters cultivating in the Edict of Destruction. For the next 7 days, Han Shuo wandered around Greenfire Swamp in an attempt to find a suitable target for his avatar of destruction to enhance its destruction divine energy. However, the result was far beyond Han Shuo's expectations. He could no longer find any god hunters. Unwilling to give up, Han Shuo continued searching in Greenfire Swamp for another 3 days. By chance, a demon general saw the mysterious little girl killing a god hunter cultivating in the Edict of Darkness in the outer perimeter of the swamp and said, "That should be enough." Immediately, Han Sho understood why he couldn't find any more god hunters. Since the little girl had killed all the god hunters, Han Sho had no reason to stay in Greenfire Swamp any longer. As for those gods who came for energy ores and medicinal ingredients, Han Sho couldn't bring himself to kill them. Therefore, he had no choice but to leave Greenfire Swamp. Should I return to the City of Shadows? Han Sho thought to himself. Cage and Eve had just died not too long ago. If Han Sho were to return to the City of Shadows during this sensitive period, he might become Avery's target. The chances of him being killed by Avery was too high. Before he could protect himself, Han Sho hesitated. Before coming to Elysium, Han Sho had promised Emily, Phoebe, and the others that he would bring them to Elysium as soon as he could. After witnessing the wonders of Elysium, Han Sho could not stop thinking about bringing them to Elysium. Elysium had abundant elements and the most mature cultivation system. Elysium was, without a doubt, the best place for any god to rapidly improve themselves. In the City of Shadows, Han Sho had befriended Carmelita and established a relationship with the House of Saint. In addition, the Celestial Pro Pharmacy had made a name for itself. Han Sho would be able to quickly establish a foothold in Elysium. However, due to his relationship with the House of Lavers and the fact that he was facing great danger, Han Sho was caught in a dilemma. Han Sho couldn't make up his mind no matter how hard he thought about it. However, he was already walking towards the exit of Greenfire Swamp. Half a day later, Han Sho had exited Greenfire Swamp and was slowly walking in the direction of the City of Shadows. He had made up his mind that he would wait outside the City of Shadows for a period of time and enter the city after the commotion had died down. Whoosh! Whoosh! Han Sho suddenly heard a sound coming from behind him. Han Sho was startled and immediately turned his head to look. He suddenly discovered a small white dot rapidly approaching. In just a few blinks of an eye, that white dot had transformed into that mysterious little girl. She was gnashing her teeth as she madly charged in his direction. The expression on her face was somewhat sinister, causing Han Sho to immediately raise his guard as though he was facing a great enemy. The little girl's perception was exceedingly keen. Now that the distance between the two had shrunk once again, Han Sho thought that she must have discovered him, or perhaps her goal was to kill him. Having witnessed the little girl's fearsomeness, Han Sho also seemed a bit flustered. He hastily turned to face her, prepared to fight to the death. However, the situation was somewhat beyond Han Sho's expectations. That little girl's body suddenly swayed unsteadily. She wore a painful expression on her face. When she saw Han Sho appear in front of her, she seemed rather stunned. She cried out in fear and suddenly fell from midair. Soon enough, a plop sound came from the ocean beneath Han Sho's feet. A small hand was constantly waving in the water as though it was trying to say something. That little girl is gravely injured. I can sense it. It was at this moment that Cauldron's spirit transmitted to Han Sho again. Han Sho, who was initially startled, became even more astonished after hearing Cauldron's spirit's words. He immediately looked all around in suspicion and released a few of the demon generals that Cauldron's spirit had kept away. The little girl's strength was already ridiculously terrifying. Wouldn't the person who could seriously injure her be even more terrifying? With this realization, Han Sho immediately prepared to leave as soon as possible. The little girl in the ocean below was not cute at all. Han Sho had seen her kill people effortlessly, and had no sympathy for her. He just wanted to get away from this trouble as soon as possible. Save me! Suddenly, the struggling little girl below barely managed to float her drenched head out of the water. She looked at Han Sho, who was coldly watching from above, and cried out softly with great difficulty. At this moment, there was only weakness on her face, as well as a delicate and pitiful look. She had long since lost the ferocity she displayed when killing people at Greenfire Swamp. Han Sho was still moved by compassion. He sighed softly and leapt into the sea, grabbing the little girl and quickly leaving this place. Boom! A loud explosion suddenly sounded from the direction of Greenfire Swamp. Even though it was very far away, Hans Shaw could still hear it. The little girl who was on the verge of death was immediately shocked. She hurriedly said, "Hurry, hurry, they've rushed out of the boundary!" Hans Shaw did not know who was chasing after her, but when he heard her say this, he did not dare to think too much about it. He immediately fled from that troublesome place as fast as he could. He passed by Neptunstier, Fort Hassel, and another village. Hans Shaw stopped in the middle of a mountain range. The little girl who was quietly grabbing the corner of Hans Shaw's clothes leaned against Hans Shaw and said softly, "They shouldn't have caught up. Who is chasing you?" Hans Shaw frowned and looked down at the weak and powerless girl. He asked, "What is your name?" After a moment of hesitation, she softly said, "Andrina." As for who was chasing her, she did not say. "Are you feeling better? Can you leave by yourself?" This little girl was too dangerous. She was basically a hot potato. Hans Shaw did not want to have someone by his side who could threaten his life, and whose origins were unknown. "Are you going to leave me behind?" Andrina blinked her purple eyes and asked pitifully. "Your strength is too terrifying. I don't even know where you came from. If I keep you by my side, who knows when I will become a pile of broken limbs? Well, since we have escaped from the enemy's pursuit, I think it's time for us to part ways. You don't have to thank me, that's all." Hans Shaw knew how dangerous the little girl was and he hastily tried to distance himself from her. "If you leave me behind now, I will definitely be killed in less than 3 days. Andrina calmly looked at Hans Shaw and softly said, "But if you continue to run away with me, I will repay you after I recover from my injuries and swear that I will not harm you. Who is chasing you?" Hans Shaw suddenly asked after a moment of silence. "The God Hunters, the most powerful ones." Andrina was somewhat hesitant. But when she saw Hans Shaw's serious expression, she knew that if she didn't give an answer, Hans Shaw would immediately leave. Didn't you kill all the God Hunters in Greenfire Swamp? Why are there still more?" Hans Shaw was shocked. "There are a few new ones. They came specifically for me. They are the leaders of the God Hunters." Andrina seemed rather astonished that Hans Shaw knew what she did in Greenfire Swamp. However, she still answered honestly. "Are they at the level of Bravst?" Hans Shaw asked in a deep voice. How do you know Bravst?" Andrina cried out in surprise. "I was nearly killed by that guy." "Of course I know his name," Hans Shaw replied. "Do you have any crystal coins on you?" Angelina did not continue talking about God Hunters and suddenly changed the topic. Hans Shaw wouldn't let her off so easily. He stared at Andrina and asked, "You haven't answered my question. I will tell you after I recover from my injuries. Right now, I am a seriously injured patient," she said weakly as she looked at Hans Shaw with a pitiful expression. Hans Shaw casually took out a medicine bottle and handed it to Andrina. He said, "Eat this, it will help with your injuries." Andrina shook her head and softly said, "It's no use. My body is special. No medicine can help me." Do you have crystal coins?" Hans Shaw stared blankly for a moment before he casually grabbed a handful of black crystal coins. He handed them to Andrina and said, "You are injured to this extent. Why would you need crystal coins?" This is..." Before he could finish his sentence, Hans Shaw suddenly saw Andrina take the black crystal coins and immediately put them into her mouth. Crunching sounds could be heard as the black crystal coins entered Andrina's lower abdomen. Hans Shaw noticed that her complexion seemed a little better after eating the crystal coins. Do you have more?" Andrina wiped the corner of her mouth and cautiously asked again. Yes. Hans Shaw was astonished. He hastily took out a bag of black crystal coins from his space ring and handed it to her. There were about 5,000 of them. Hans Shaw was extremely astonished. He didn't expect that Andrina wanted crystal coins not to spend them, but to eat them. Chapter 7:12 Do you have more? Andrina asked cautiously again after all 5,000 black crystal coins had disappeared into her abdomen a few minutes later. Han Shaw's face turned a little ugly. He threw another big bag of black crystal coins to Andrina, his heart bleeding. Do you have more? Do you have more? No, no more! Han Shaw's face turned livid. He glared at Andrina and said, You ate 90,000 black crystal coins in one go. Are you still not full? He began to fly into a rage. The potions he had painstakingly refined last time had earned him a total of 96,000 black crystal coins. Originally, these crystal coins were enough for Han Sho to live a comfortable life. He didn't expect that Andrina would finish all of them in just half an hour. It would be strange if he wasn't angry. Han Sho let out a low growl. Andrina also felt guilty. She lowered her head and didn't dare to look at Han Sho. She said softly, I'm far from full. But my injuries are a little better now. Well, I'm a little sleepy. I'm going to sleep first. Andrina ignored Han Sho's murderous gaze and snored heavily. She clutched Han Shaw's arm tightly and fell into a deep sleep. My crystal coins! Han Sho let out a long howl. Looking at Andrina, who had fallen into a deep sleep, he yelled angrily. What kind of monster are you? How did you eat 90,000 black crystal coins in one go? Unfortunately, Andrina couldn't hear Han Shaw's complaints anymore. After eating 90,000 black crystal coins, Han Sho discovered that Andrina's serious injuries were recovering at a miraculous speed. In her deep sleep, her body was like the most sophisticated machine, breaking down the energy contained in the black crystal coins and distributing them to every part of her body that was injured. Crystal coins on Elysium were a kind of energy ore, and black crystal coins contained the most energy. However, according to Han Shaw's knowledge, although the energy contained in crystal coins had a wide range of uses, they were generally used in interplanar transportation matrices, boundary towers, and energy towers, or in refining divine weapons. He had never heard of Andrina directly using it on a human body. Who exactly is this Andrina? Han Sho was puzzled. She fell into a deep sleep, completely ignoring the dangers outside and placing her safety in the hands of Han Sho. Han Sho knew that the god hunters in Green Fire Swamp were still after her, and therefore, he didn't dare to stay in the area for too long. After Andrina finished eating his 90,000 black crystal coins, Han Sho was determined to take her with him. He was going to settle the score with her when she woke up. Half a month later, Han Sho arrived at a mountain range near the City of Shadows. Han Sho was very familiar with the area. He easily found the underground cave that he had stayed in for a long time and entered it with Andrina. Andrina slept for half a month. During her deep sleep, her body was constantly filled with energy. Her face, which was on the verge of death, started to have traces of redness. Her heavily injured body was noticeably in better shape. However, the fact that Andrina showed no signs of waking up after sleeping for half a month gave Han Sho quite a headache. The City of Shadows was right in front of him, but it didn't seem appropriate to bring Andrina into the city while she was in a deep sleep. However, if he were to leave Andrina alone, one could well imagine what would happen to her if someone discovered her whereabouts. Besides, Andrina owed Han Sho 90,000 black crystal coins, and Han Sho was still waiting for her to repay the huge sum. Han Sho had no choice but to stay in the underground cave. His three bodies cultivated together while waiting for Andrina to wake up. During this process, Han Sho did not stay idle. Using the coverage of his demon generals, he slowly learned about the current situation in the City of Shadows from the patrolling divine guards. Avery, who had lost his son and daughter, had mobilized the forces of the Fifth Corps and the House of Lavers to the fullest. They began to search for any murderers who might have killed his children. Those who had a grudge against the House of Lavers and Avery himself had sleepless nights during this period of time. They were in a state of chaos because of Avery. Several people who were once enemies of Avery and had coincidentally appeared in the vicinity of Fort Hassel had vanished without a trace. The higher-ups of the major family clans in the City of Shadows knew that Avery had gone crazy during this period of time. They secretly warned their descendants not to provoke Avery, who had lost his mind. Those family clans that held grudges against Avery had tightened their defenses. After learning about some of Avery's crazy actions, Han Shuo realized that Avery probably did not consider him as the biggest suspect. After all, Han Shuo's strength was far too weak in Avery's eyes. Logically speaking, there was no way he could have killed Cage and Eve without anyone noticing. With that, Han Shuo was secretly relieved. He knew that the pressure on him would lessen after he returned to the City of Shadows. ******************************** God Swamp Pharmacy in the City of Shadows. Stice kneeled on the ground and reported in a deep voice. Master, Avery is investigating Carmelita. It seems that Avery suspects Carmelita. An elderly man with a head full of white hair and a face as clear as jade put on a faint smile and said, Avery is naturally paranoid. Haha, in addition to the fact that the incident was indeed very fishy, he will not only suspect Carmelita, but also every one of his enemies. However, we naturally have to make him point his finger at Carmelita. That way, when the two sides fight, we will be able to enjoy the show. Master, that youngster has disappeared without a trace. We still can't find a single trace of him, Stice said in a low voice. The white-haired old man subconsciously tapped the corner of his chair with his index finger. There was a look of doubt on his face as he said, That kid really exceeded my expectations. Avery personally made a move, but he actually failed to kill him. This is really unbelievable. Forget it, it's fine as long as he's not in the City of Shadows. There's no need to worry about him. So many family clans couldn't find his whereabouts. It's only a pity that he lost the medicine formula. Master, what should we do next? Stice asked in a respectful voice. After pondering for a moment, the elderly man suddenly said, Let's use the pawn we left in the House of Saint. We are willing to sacrifice that pawn in exchange for a piece of information that will make Avery certain that Carmelita had sent someone to Fort Hassel. Understood. Stice put on a gloomy smile and respectfully withdrew from the room. On the third day, inside a secret chamber of the Fifth Corps, Avery's face was as cold as a blade. He asked, Are you sure? A divine guard of the House of Saint, when he was drunk last night, unintentionally mentioned that Carmelita had sent someone to Fort Hassel. The time was exactly 8 days before the death of the young master and the young lady. Judging from the time, it fits perfectly. A figure in the darkness replied indifferently. That vicious and ugly woman. It's her. It's really her. All Eve said was that she was ugly, and yet she dared to do such a thing. What a heartless and heartless whore. How dare she? Avery's body was shivering. He gnashed his teeth and roared. My lord, isn't it the House of Saint? The shadow pondered for a moment before he gently reminded. So what if it's the House of Saint? If worst comes to worst, I'll just leave the City of Shadows. With my strength, even if I leave the City of Shadows, I can still survive in the Darkness Dominion. How dare she kill my son and daughter? I will not let her off so easily. Avery bellowed hysterically. His face was malevolent and crazed. The shadow did not say anything else. He knew that once Avery had made up his mind, even if he knew it was wrong, he would continue down that path. All persuasion would be futile. After a long while, Avery gradually calmed down. He calmly said, However, this matter needs to be carefully planned out. That ugly woman possesses extraordinary strength. Even if I were to personally attack her, I wouldn't have the confidence to defeat her. Although Avery was confident that he could defeat Carmelita, he wasn't completely confident. Therefore, he didn't dare to act rashly. Another 2 months passed. One day, Han Shuo, who was in the midst of cultivation, suddenly sensed movement beside him. Immediately, he opened his eyes and looked straight at Andrina, whose long eyelashes were fluttering. Andrina, who had been in a deep sleep for nearly 4 months, was no longer as pale as a sheet of paper. Instead, her fair complexion had a tinge of redness. Andrina's eyelashes fluttered for a moment before she opened her beautiful purple eyes. She stretched lazily and wore a satisfied and comfortable smile on her face. In a melodious voice, she said, "How long have I been asleep?" "Phew! I feel much better. My body doesn't hurt as much anymore." Han Shuo's handsome face immediately darkened when he saw that Andrina had woken up. He bluntly demanded, "Pay me 90,000 black crystal coins." Andrina's small face was full of a bitter smile. She looked at Han Shuo pitifully and said, "I didn't expect that the first thing I would hear after waking up would be asking me to pay. Aren't you going too far? 90,000 black crystal coins. That's all I have. Do you know what 90,000 black crystal coins mean? Do you know how long I've worked hard? How long have I saved up? Do you know how many things 90,000 black crystal coins can buy? Do you know?" Han Shuo beat his chest and stamped his feet. His tone was filled with endless resentment. "I don't have a single crystal coin," Andrina said concisely after patiently listening to Han Shuo's complaints. Han Shuo was speechless. Having said so much in vain, Han Shuo was crestfallen. He suddenly thought of something and his spirits lifted. He looked at Andrina with a grin like a big bad wolf looking at a little white rabbit. He said with a mischievous smile, "Do you have anything valuable? For example, a divine weapon. That can be used as crystal coins." "No way!" Andrina suddenly hugged her shoulders with her hands, as if to protect the things on her body tightly. She took a small step back and said, "I don't have anything that I can give you in exchange for gold coins. Don't even think about it. Then how are you going to compensate me for the 90,000 black crystal coins that you owe me?" As soon as Han Shuo saw that his method didn't work, he immediately abandoned his hypocritical face and put on a ferocious expression. During this period of time, Andrina had been very quiet, and she would often put on a pitiful expression in front of Han Shuo. Han Shuo had forgotten just how fierce she used to be. Andrina obviously wasn't afraid of Han Shuo. She even stretched out her hand and pulled on the corner of Han Shuo's mouth. Just as Han Shuo was about to go berserk, she giggled and said, "Don't pretend to be so fierce. I know that you are actually a good person. You are different from those god hunters. Last time, you definitely didn't hide in the shadows with evil intentions. You saved me when I was seriously injured and treated me very well. I know that you won't hurt me." After taking a short pause, Andrina smilingly added, "Also, you can't hurt me now." After hearing Andrina's words, Han Shuo put on a dispirited face. The ferocious expression on his face was no longer there. He said to her in a dispirited manner, "Have you recovered from your injuries? If you have, go and earn some money and return my crystal coins to me. After that, go and do whatever you need to do. I haven't fully recovered, but it's more than enough to protect myself." Andrina giggled. She twirled her body in front of Han Shuo and smoothed out the creases on her little dress. She then nodded in satisfaction and said, "I don't know how to earn money, but I am willing to protect you for a period of time. Consider it as compensation for eating your crystal coins. You will protect me?" Han Shuo let out a disdainful groan, but he immediately shut his mouth. When he recalled Andrina's terrifying means and the cauldron spirit's evaluation of her, his mind churned rapidly. After a while, he probingly asked, "Can the current you withstand a sneak attack from an early-stage high god?" "It shouldn't be a problem. Although I can't defeat him for the time being, it should be more than enough to escape with you." "Right, if you can get me that many crystal coins, we won't even have to escape." Andrina thought for a moment and replied. Han Shuo was shocked when he saw that Andrina didn't seem to be lying. Andrina was still confident that she could withstand an early-stage high god under such circumstances. Han Shuo knew that the true strength of this little girl could only be described as terrifying. However, her ability to eat crystal coins gave Han Shuo a huge headache. 10,000 black crystal coins a year. You ate 90,000 black crystal coins of mine and protected me for 9 years. That's it, Han Shuo said straightforwardly. Hiring a high god as a bodyguard would cost far more than 10,000 black crystal coins a year. Han Shuo was prepared to bargain with Andrina. He thought that he would have to keep her for at least a year before letting her go. To Han Shuo's surprise, Andrina did not raise any objections to Han Shuo's proposal. Instead, she very straightforwardly agreed. She giggled and said, "All right, you are a good person and I don't have anything to do for the time being." Han Shuo stared blankly for a moment. 90,000 black crystal coins was definitely not enough to hire a high god for 9 years. But Andrina's straightforwardness made Han Shuo rather suspicious. He thought, could she be plotting something? This little girl is definitely not as innocent as she looks. She is a little freak who kills without blinking an eye. Is it a blessing or a curse to keep her around for so long? What are you worried about? Andrina asked as though she could see through Han Shuo's thoughts. No, nothing. Han Shuo put on a straight face and said, "Come, let's go to the City of Shadows." With Andrina by his side, Han Shuo decided not to hide anymore. As long as Avery did not ambush him, Han Shuo did not have to worry about Avery's revenge. Therefore, he openly returned to the City of Shadows with Andrina. After not returning to the City of Shadows for a long time, when Han Shuo stepped into the city, all the large family clans that learned of his return immediately took action. Their target was the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. Chapter 713. All of a sudden, the crowd converged towards the Celestial Pro Pharmacy and blocked its entrance. When Han Shuo arrived at the Celestial Pro Pharmacy from the City of Shadows, he discovered that the place was already packed with people. He roughly estimated that there were at least 500 people gathered in front of the entrance of the tiny Celestial Pro Pharmacy. Anaito and his entourage, who were in charge of guarding the Celestial Pro Pharmacy, stood in front of the entrance. They were at a loss as to what to do when faced with so many powerful people from various family clans. Those in front of Anaito were all influential figures in the City of Shadows. Logically speaking, he should have allowed them to enter the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. Unfortunately, the first floor of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy was too small to accommodate so many people at the same time. The second and third floors were where Han Shuo refined medicines. It was impossible for strangers to enter. Anaito was at a loss as to what to do, especially when Andre of the Saint family was among those people. Anaito was in an even bigger dilemma. If he were to allow Andre to enter, the others would certainly not be willing. But if all of them were to enter, there would not be enough space. Therefore, Anaito forced a smile and bowed while apologizing profusely. Fortunately, those people did not mind. They were happily chatting with each other as they waited for Han Shuo's arrival. After the previous experience of distributing medicines according to the number of people, these people who received the news of Han Shuo's return immediately dragged several groups of family clan guards and rushed to the Celestial Pro Pharmacy to wait for Han Shuo. That was why the Celestial Pro Pharmacy was so packed. This is... When Han Shuo arrived at the entrance of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy, he was immediately at a loss whether to laugh or cry at the scene before him. Brian, you're back. Just in time, haha, I've been waiting for a long time. Hurry up and take out the newly refined medicines. Brian, it's good that you're fine. I've prepared all the crystal coins. We'll do as you say. Before Han Shuo could react, those who knew and did not know him shouted one after another. They sounded very familiar with Han Shuo, but Han Shuo knew that he had only met them once. Some of them he had not even met before. Because of Han Shuo's arrival, the bustling crowd parted to form a path leading to the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. Standing in front of the entrance of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy were several high-ranking members of large family clans who were smiling and waving at Han Shuo, urging him to hurry up. I didn't expect that you would be so popular in this city. Andrina, who was standing beside Han Shuo, said softly. The Andrina in front of others had reverted to the cold and indifferent expression that Han Shuo had when he first met her. Her adorable little face was deliberately cold and unsmiling. It made her look rather out of place in this bustling environment. Han Shuo forced a smile and walked straight to the entrance of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. He took a look at Anaito, who was sweating profusely, and Andre, who was standing there with a smile on his face. He bowed slightly and said, "My apologies for making you wait so long." It's fine, it's fine," the crowd hastily replied. After greeting each and every one of them smilingly, Hansho arrived at the first floor of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. He swept a glance at the leaders of large family clans and said, "I know very well the purpose of your visit. This time, we will distribute the medicines according to each family clan instead of the number of heads." Those present at the entrance of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy were all leaders of large family clans and their divine guards. Only those long-established family clans in the City of Shadows were able to receive the news immediately upon Hansho's return. Rugus of the House of Kisa immediately put on an awkward smile. He had brought the most divine guards with him, and thought that he would be able to take advantage of the situation. He did not expect that Hansho would not distribute the medicines according to the number of heads. "Rugus, what's the matter? Do you have any objections?" Bess of the House of Kinson covered her mouth and giggled. No objections," Rugus immediately denied with a mischievous smile. How about this? Each family clan can send in a few representatives. As for the divine guards of their family clans, they will remain outside for the time being," Hansho suggested. Everyone nodded in agreement. Then, Andre of the House of Saint, Bess and her daughter Gia of the House of Kinson, Rugus of the House of Kisa, and Tuyas of the House of Buller walked in one after another. The House of Lavers that Hansho was most familiar with, however, did not send anyone. Rugus was the cousin of the Patriarch of the House of Kisa and one of the 7 chief of divine guards in the City of Shadows. He was in charge of the 6th Corps. He cultivated in the energy of death and was an early-stage high god. Tuyas was the uncle of the Patriarch of the House of Buller. As his talent in cultivation was limited, he had lived his entire life in the realm of late-stage mid-god and cultivated in the energy of darkness. However, he was a genius in business. Most of the businesses in the House of Buller were managed by him. "Brian, why did you disappear for so long? Do you know that all the major family clans have sent people to search for you?" Gia asked smilingly to Hansho. "I went on a trip with a friend but was delayed by something. That's why I came back so late." Thank you all for your concern. I will remember it," Hansho said smilingly. "All right, I have refined more than 1,000 bottles of various medicines. I will take out 1,000 bottles and distribute them among the 4 major family clans. Each family clan will get 250 bottles. Do you have any problem with that?" "Of course," the crowd replied in unison. Hansho had long known that these people would listen to him. He smilingly took out 1,000 bottles of medicines and placed them on the cabinets in front of the crowd. The price and function of each bottle were clearly displayed. Under the gazes of the crowd, Hansho divided the 1,000 bottles of medicines into 4 pieces. There were more than 600 bottles of pellets of rejuvenation. Each bottle was worth 100 black crystal coins. There were also some pellets of tranquility and nirvana pills with prices ranging from 300 to 500 black crystal coins. Hansho did not treat the House of Saint unfairly. Each family had the same quantity and type of pellets. After Hansho divided the medicines into 4 pieces, the representatives of the 4 major family clans took out their black crystal coins one after another and threw them in front of Hansho. Each family clan had more crystal coins than the other. Hansho didn't need to look to know that there were at least 150,000 black crystal coins in his account. Andrina, who was standing beside him, suddenly stared at the 4 heavy bags of crystal coins in front of Hansho with shining eyes. She subconsciously licked the corner of her mouth, as if she was looking at an incomparably sumptuous delicacy. Hansho immediately understood what Andrina was thinking when he saw the greedy look in her eyes. Hansho really couldn't predict what this mysterious little girl was thinking. He was afraid that she would be unable to resist the temptation in her heart, and directly swallow the crystal coins in front of everyone. Hansho lightly coughed and waved his hand. His space ring flashed 4 times and the 4 bags of black crystal coins disappeared. After the bags of crystal coins were stored in the space ring, Han Sho immediately checked the numbers on the bags with his consciousness. He discovered that each bag of crystal coins was exactly 40,000 black crystal coins. The 4 bags of black crystal coins were a total of 160,000 black crystal coins. He had earned more than last time. Everyone, are you satisfied? Han Sho's mood immediately turned for the better. He asked smilingly. Of course, we are satisfied. The 4 of them secretly put away their medicines and chatted with Han Sho for a while. Under Han Sho's hints, 3 of them left in satisfaction. Naturally, the one who stayed behind was Andre of the House of Saint. After the other 3 families left one after another, Andre put on a gentle smile and said to Han Sho, Carmelita is currently not in the City of Shadows. Do you know where she is? What is she doing? Without immediately answering Andre's question, Han Sho took out a bag of black crystal coins and handed it to Andrina, who had been looking at him pitifully. He instructed, Go upstairs. No matter what, don't fall asleep like last time. Andrina nodded. Her eyes were filled with excitement. She hugged the big bag of 40,000 black crystal coins that Han Sho handed to her and hastily headed to the 2nd and 3rd floors. She was unwilling to stay for even a moment longer. After Andrina left, Han Sho let out a soft sigh and said, I don't know where she went, but I know that she has been looking for me. I believe that her departure has something to do with me, right? Han Sho wasn't completely ignorant of the situation in the City of Shadows. From the conversations of the divine guards who were searching for him, Han Sho knew that Carmelita had spared no effort in searching for him. Han Sho was very touched. He understood that Carmelita truly considered him as a friend. Andre, who had been observing Han Sho, nodded in his mind. He was very satisfied with Han Sho's performance. He was not pretentious, but he also revealed his true feelings. This made Andre feel very comfortable. That's right. She has indeed gone to other places to look for you. Carmelita truly considers you as a friend. She doesn't want anything to happen to you. Therefore, I don't want anything to happen to you either. Do you understand? Andre pointed at Han Sho. Han Sho stared blankly for a moment before he looked at Andre in astonishment. He couldn't figure out the real meaning behind Andre's words. He asked, You mean, I want you to be alive and well? Andre put on a solemn face and said in a deep voice with a solemnity that was rarely seen on Han Sho, I have investigated the matter thoroughly. You can rest assured that Avery will not dare to do anything to you again. Han Sho was startled. He suddenly raised his head and said, You. He didn't understand why Andre would help him so much. He was at a loss for what to do with this sudden gesture of goodwill. Of course, I can only make sure that Avery will not dare to do anything to you again. As for the grievances you suffered last time, as a member of the House of Saint, I cannot do anything to Avery for the sake of the stability of the City of Shadows. I hope you can understand. Andre explained softly. After thinking for a moment, he continued without waiting for Han Sho to reply. Also, do not mention this matter to Carmelita. I know her temperament. If she were to know that you were seriously injured by Avery, given her usual temperament, she would definitely stand up for you. If that were to happen, it might even cause the House of Lavers to rebel. This is definitely not something we wish to see. After keeping silent for a moment, Han Sho nodded with difficulty and said, I understand. One day, I will avenge myself. When you have the strength to do so, I will not stop you. Perhaps I will even help you. But before that, you still need to be cautious. All right, I won't say much. Just keep my words in mind. Andre stood up smilingly and walked out of the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. Han Sho understood Andre's position very well. It was already beyond Han Sho's expectations that Andre was willing to keep him safe. Naturally, he wouldn't ask Andre to stand up for him on behalf of the House of Saint and find trouble with Avery. The more power and value a person had, the more respect and status they would receive. Han Sho knew that his current value was far from enough to make the House of Saint and the House of Lavers turn against each other for him. However, Han Shuo was still unwilling to give up. He believed that one day, he would have enough leverage to make the House of Saint be willing to eliminate Avery for his sake. As long as he had enough strength, nothing was impossible. Is that guy gone? As soon as Han Shuo arrived at the third floor of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy, Andrina's voice immediately sounded. That guy is pretty good. He almost discovered my hidden strength. She stuffed black crystal coins into her mouth one after another. Her voice was muffled. There are 40,000 black crystal coins in that bag. Remember, you have another 4 years to live. Han Shuo came over mainly to remind her. Also, don't make me sleep for another 3 to 4 months like last time. Got it. This time, I will eat them one by one and digest them slowly. I won't be in the same situation as last time. All right, don't disturb me. Go do what you need to do. Andrina's little face was filled with impatience. Her eyes were glowing as she stared at the crystal coins in her hand. Han Shuo had no choice but to return to the second floor. The second floor had been redecorated and looked even more dazzling than before the destruction. Sparkling and translucent pharmaceutical utensils were placed everywhere. Those who didn't know better would definitely think that Han Shuo was a genuine pharmacist. Little would they know that Han Shuo only used a single 9 tessellation cauldron to refine medicinal pellets. Anaito was standing guard outside the Celestial Pro Pharmacy with all his might. After all the major family clans had left one after another, Anaito walked in and asked with a fawning smile. Did you leave some for our third core? 100 bottles. Only 20,000 black crystal coins from your Lord Erebus. Han Shuo had long prepared additional medicinal pellets. As soon as Anaito walked in, Han Shuo laid out the medicines on the table. Anaito was also prepared. He immediately took out a bag of crystal coins with a big smile on his face. It was obvious that the bag contained more than 20,000 black crystal coins. He carefully took out 20,000 black crystal coins and respectfully handed them to Han Shuo. He said, Brian, as someone who works for others, it is only natural that I cannot be as generous as other family clans. Haha, this is a public expense. Any excess will have to be turned in. So, got it. Take the medicines and hand them in. Thank you for your efforts in my shop these past few days. Han Shuo naturally understood that those black crystal coins did not belong to Anaito. He couldn't be bothered to haggle over such a trivial matter. It's my pleasure, my pleasure. Anaito hastily replied smilingly. After taking the medicines, he instructed his divine guards. I will go to the third court to hand in my report. You all stay here. You know what to do if anyone dares to cause trouble. After saying those words, Anaito hastily left. Brian, long time no see. Han Shuo, who was about to enter, suddenly heard a familiar voice. He turned his head and saw Donna standing in front of the medicine door. Donna was as dazzling as ever. However, when Han Shuo saw her eyes, they seemed to be tinged with sadness. Although she was still smiling, that smile appeared somewhat forced. Han Shuo, who had killed Cage and Eve, had never regretted his actions. He had a clear conscience. Who asked Avery to attack him first? However, when facing Donna, Han Shuo still felt somewhat awkward. It was as though he felt that he had secretly done something wrong to Donna. Han Shuo chuckled and said, Sister Donna, long time no see indeed. I heard that you had made a trip to the Space Dominion. Haha, I even paid you a visit. Too bad you weren't there. Donna looked at Han Shuo, who was praising her in front of her. She let out a soft sigh in her heart and replied with a forced smile. Yes, I did go on a long trip. I didn't expect that when I returned, my 2 good-for-nothing siblings would be killed. She wouldn't have discovered something and become suspicious of me, right? That's impossible. Even Avery didn't suspect me. Why would Donna? Han Shuo's heart skipped a beat. However, the smile on his face did not diminish. He warmly invited Donna in before he sighed and said, Sister Donna, I have heard a little about what happened to your siblings. My condolences. Could it be that it wasn't him? Donna, who had been secretly observing Han Shuo's every change in expression, did not see the slightest bit of abnormality on Han Shuo's face. No one in the House of Lavers would suspect Han Shuo because, to their knowledge, Han Shuo didn't have the strength nor the guts to do so. However, Donna, who had been to the Profound Continent and fought side by side with Han Shuo, didn't think so. Donna understood Han Shuo's viciousness and decisiveness. She had also faintly guessed that Han Shuo had concealed his strength. Therefore, when she learned of Cage and Eve's deaths, she only needed to do a little investigation before the first person she suspected was Han Shuo. There were many people in the City of Shadows who held grudges against Cage and Eve. Chapter 7:14. For the next few days, Han Shuo lived a leisurely life. Andrina, who was on the third floor, was still munching on crystal coins as though they were biscuits. Her complexion was getting better and better. It was obvious that she had mostly recovered from her injuries. Han Shuo did not go out to collect medicinal ingredients or refine medicinal pellets. Instead, he stayed on the second floor and meditated. He understood that in the City of Shadows, only members of large family clans could afford to buy medicinal pellets with crystal coins. After all, such people were in the minority. If he were to refine too many medicinal pellets, the supply and demand would be out of balance. That would not reflect the rarity and preciousness of his medicines. Therefore, Han Shuo did not continue to collect medicinal ingredients to refine medicinal pellets. He told the public that he had too few medicinal ingredients, and that his energy was limited. 3 months went by in the blink of an eye. Han Shuo's avatar, that had been painstakingly cultivating the energy of death in the cauldron of myriad demon, finally made a breakthrough to the early stage mid-god realm. With the help of the mid-god divine soul, Han Shuo's avatar rapidly stabilized its current realm and focused on mastering several new energy techniques. Han Shuo's avatar of destruction had become even more adept at using the orb of destruction. He could now use it at will. According to Cauldron Spirit, after his main body was reconstructed, the strength of Han Shuo's physical body had improved to the point that it could withstand a portion of Cauldron Spirit's demon general energy. In other words, Han Shuo could temporarily borrow Cauldron Spirit's energy to dramatically increase his strength for a short period of time. However, this came at a great risk. If Han Shuo's body was unable to withstand the risk, or if he was seriously injured again, he would not be able to recover as easily as before. That was because borrowing Cauldron Spirit's energy required the use of Han Shuo's demonic infant. Once the demonic infant was injured, Han Shuo would have to spend far more time to recover than his physical body could. In short, according to Cauldron Spirit, Han Shuo's current body could borrow a portion of Cauldron Spirit's energy to dramatically increase Han Shuo's strength in an instant. However, this process would only last for a very short period of time. Once it was over, both his physical body and his demonic infant would pay a heavy price. When Han Shuo learned of this information from Cauldron Spirit, he was rather delighted. The short-term boost in strength would be enough for Han Shuo to deal with some unexpected events, such as Avery's sudden attack. Donna never came to see him again. Although she didn't say it out loud, Han Shuo knew that Donna was suspicious of him. He knew that the two of them couldn't be as close as before. Although he felt helpless, Han Shuo didn't try to salvage the relationship. From the moment he treated Avery as his enemy, he knew that he and Donna would part ways one day. During this period of time, Andre paid another visit and asked Han Shuo if he knew anything about Carmelita. As Carmelita had not returned to the City of Shadows for several months and had not sent any news to the House of Saint for over a month, Andre was rather worried about her safety. Naturally, Han Shuo couldn't provide Andre with any help. He could only honestly admit that he knew nothing about Carmelita's safety. It seemed that Avery of the Fifth Corps was also working outside. He hadn't been in the City of Shadows for over 2 months. With Avery not in the City of Shadows, Han Shuo didn't have to be constantly on guard against Avery's attacks. One day, Han Shuo, who was meditating on the second floor, received an invitation. The invitation came from the God Swamp Pharmacy in the City of Shadows. It stated that there was an exchange meeting between pharmacists, and Han Shuo was invited. Han Shuo wanted to immediately decline the invitation, but the invitation clearly stated that they wanted to discuss business with him. After hesitating for a moment, Han Shuo decided to go and take a look. At dusk of the second day. "Where are you going?" Andrina suddenly asked as soon as Han Shuo walked to the door. "There's an exchange meeting between pharmacists. I'm going there to take a look. You can just stay here." Han Shuo replied casually and walked away without paying any attention to Andrina. "I'm going with you." Andrina's petite voice floated down from the third floor. She lightly stepped on Han Shuo's shoulder with her two little feet, giggled, and hopped down. "My enemies aren't in the City of Shadows for the time being. You don't have to follow me. It'll be fine." With Cauldron Spirit's assurance, Han Shuo felt much more assured. He believed that if he were to borrow Cauldron Spirit's energy in an instant, even if a high god were to launch a sneak attack, he would at least have the opportunity to escape using demonic blood disassembly. Therefore, he no longer needed to rely too much on Andrina. "No, I want to protect you. I have to follow you all the time." Andrina wrinkled her nose. Soon after, she let out a soft laugh and whispered, "Are you going to do something naughty? For example, fooling around with some woman? Hee hee. Even if that's the case, I will still follow you. Suit yourself." Han Shuo didn't particularly care whether he followed Andrina or not. However, Han Shuo suddenly recalled something. He stared blankly for a moment before he asked Andrina, "You have more or less recovered from your injuries. Will you be able to get rid of an early-stage high god?" Andrina did not immediately answer Han Shuo's question. Instead, she thought seriously for a moment before she answered, "I haven't fully recovered. If that guy continues to fight me, I will definitely be able to kill him. But I will also be injured. But if he immediately escapes when he sees that the situation is bad, I won't be able to kill him." "I see." Han Shuo nodded. Shortly after, he put on a mischievous smile and said, "Little Andrina, there's a guy who wants me dead. Why don't we join forces and get rid of him? Don't worry, if you get injured, I will provide crystal coins for you to recover for free. What do you think? Rather than sitting and waiting for death, it was better to take the initiative and attack." With Cauldron Spirit's assurance, Han Shuo suddenly had a bold idea. He would wait for Avery to return, join forces with Andrina, and use the same method to launch a sneak attack on Avery, eliminating his greatest enemy. Han Shuo could roughly guess Andrina's strength. In addition to the instantaneous eruption of strength that he borrowed Cauldron Spirit's energy, Han Shuo believed that if he and Andrina worked together, they would have at least a 70 to 80% chance of succeeding. Therefore, he could no longer suppress his evil thoughts. "No, I'm only responsible for protecting you. I won't help you kill anyone." Andrina flatly refused. When she saw Han Shuo's gloomy face, she giggled and said, "But I can look after you. You can do it yourself and I will cheer for you from the side. If you can't do it, I can save you. How does that sound?" Han Shuo coldly groaned and did not say anything. He walked towards the God Swamp Pharmacy. Even with Cauldron Spirit's energy, Han Shuo did not believe that he could easily kill Avery. Without Andrina's assurance, Han Shuo would not take such an unknown risk. When Andrina, who was behind Han Shuo, saw Han Shuo's cold and stiff face, she giggled. She did not get angry and continued to follow Han Shuo. When Han Shuo appeared in front of the God Swamp Pharmacy, Andrina, who had been lively all this time, suddenly turned cold. She immediately reverted to her cold, unapproachable demeanor when there were outsiders around. Her flushed little face was no longer adorable and gave people a very uncomfortable feeling. The God Swamp Pharmacy was the largest pharmacy in the City of Shadows. Before coming here, Han Shuo had learned that the God Swamp Pharmacy was not only famous in the City of Shadows, but also in the entire Darkness Dominion. The God Swamp Pharmacy was also sold in several other major cities that were equally famous as the City of Shadows. Although there were 5 major family clans in the City of Shadows, it was said that the overall strength of the God Swamp Pharmacy in the Darkness Dominion was not weaker than that of the other 4 family clans except for the House of Saint. This piece of information was beyond Han Shuo's expectations. He did not expect that a small pharmacy could possess such power. It was for this reason that Han Shuo felt that the God Swamp Pharmacy had pointed him in the right direction. He was very curious about the God Swamp Pharmacy, and therefore decided to pay a visit after seeing the invitation for business. The interior of the God Swamp Pharmacy was very spacious. There were quite a few buildings scattered all over the place. Each and every one of them was bigger and more spacious than Han Shuo's Celestial Pro Pharmacy. After handing over the invitation, the guard seemed to take Han Shuo very seriously when he learned that he was a pharmacist of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. He personally led Han Shuo to a tall building at the back that was used to receive guests. They went all the way to the top floor. It was a banquet hall that was 1,000 square meters in size. Beautiful paintings were hung on the walls. Soft, colorless carpets were spread all over the floor. There were many glassware placed in the banquet hall. Some pharmacists with grizzled hair and rosy complexions were holding wine glasses in their hands and chatting cheerfully. It was not necessary for a pharmacist to be strong in the cultivation of physical strength. Most pharmacists use the cultivation of physical strength as a supplement. Most of them cultivated in the elemental energy of fire or water. Fire elemental energy could make it easier for them to refine medicines, while water elemental energy could make it easier for them to refine the essence of medicines. However, as long as they cultivated to the realm of low god, they would be able to handle every step of medicine refinement. Therefore, almost all pharmacists would stay at this realm and spend the extra time studying the true essence of medicine refinement. The guard who led Han Shuo to the banquet hall announced Han Shuo's name after sweeping his eyes across the people in the banquet hall. The originally noisy banquet hall suddenly quieted down. Those pharmacists who were chatting cheerfully turned their gazes to Han Shuo at the same time. Their eyes were filled with curiosity and astonishment. During this period of time, Han Shuo's Celestial Pro Pharmacy had been in the limelight in the City of Shadows. The name of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy would be mentioned in almost every banquet held by the members of large family clans. As fellow pharmacists, it would be difficult for these people not to hear Han Shuo's name. Therefore, when the young Han Shuo suddenly arrived and stood before them, these elderly pharmacists all turned their attention to him. They wanted to know what kind of person this famous pharmacist from the Celestial Pro Pharmacy was. This youngster is the owner of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy? An old woman with green hair and a face as pale as a sheet of paper, dressed in colorful clothes, suddenly cried out in alarm. Senior Gu Li, this is the owner of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy, Brian. The guard who led Han Shuo in confirmed smilingly. Stice led the way. Han Shuo followed behind and headed to a room at the back of the banquet hall. Chapter 7:15. Senior Gu Li, please wait! The guard hastily stopped Gu Li, who was fuming with rage. By this time, Han Shuo and Stice had entered the room and the door was shut. Get that youngster to come out. I must have a word with him. He doesn't know how to respect his seniors at all. I must teach him a good lesson. Gu Li was famous among the pharmacists in Mirage City for having a bad temper. However, due to her superb skills in medicine refinement, most of the family clans in Mirage City had been able to tolerate her temper. This was the first time she had been so mercilessly despised by someone. My apologies, Mr. Brian is currently talking to our master. If you have any questions, please wait for him to come out. The Divine Guard explained in a manner that was neither servile nor overbearing. All right, I will wait here. I don't believe that youngster won't come out. Gu Li's stubborn temper flared up. She paid no attention to the conference going on in the banquet hall. She stood motionless in front of the door and waited with a face full of anger. The Divine Guard did not pay much attention to her after seeing that she had stopped causing trouble. He stood face to face with Ghoulie and looked at her smilingly without saying a word. Some of the pharmacists in the banquet hall were secretly delighted to see Ghoulie being humiliated. There were also some who were extremely annoyed by Han Shuo's attitude. They thought that Han Shuo did not know how to respect his seniors at all. At this moment, those pharmacists stopped talking about medicine and started gossiping about Han Shuo in low voices. It was a reception hall about 30 square meters in size. It was much smaller than the banquet hall outside, but the decorations were much more gorgeous. There were many rare medicines and some glassware, indicating that the owner was a pharmacist. After Stice led Han Shuo into the hall, he personally poured a cup of fine wine for Han Shuo and chatted with Han Shuo about some interesting happenings in the City of Shadows. When he noticed that Han Shuo was getting impatient, he finally brought up the main topic. He smilingly said, "The Celestial Pearl Pharmacy in your hands has been in the limelight recently. All the aristocratic brothers in the City of Shadows are gossiping about your Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. They are proud to own the medicines you refined. Haha, it is truly astonishing that you have achieved so much at such a young age, you flatter me." Han Shuo put on a calm smile and silently waited for Stice to get to the main topic. However, after Stice praised Han Shuo for a while, he suddenly changed the topic and said, "However, the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy started too late. If you want to make your medicines known to the entire Darkness Dominion, even the Death and Destruction Dominions, it will take more than 8 to 10 years. But if you are willing to cooperate with us, we can guarantee that your medicines will be made known to everyone in the shortest time possible, and you will reap even greater profits. What do you think?" Stice asked sincerely. "Oh?" Han Shuo put on a bright smile and took a sip of the fine wine. He asked, "How do we cooperate?" "You will share the recipes of your medicines with us, God Swamp. All the medicines refined from your recipes can be sold through our pharmacies located all over the Darkness Dominion. We will split the profits 280. What do you think?" Stice probed with a gentle smile as he observed every expression on Han Shuo's face. 280? You get 20 and I get 80? Han Shuo thought that this was a rather generous way to split the profits. However, he was still unwilling to share the recipes of his medicines. At most, he would sell the medicines he refined to them. No, you misunderstand." Stice's expression changed and he hastily said, "You get 20 and we get 80. The smile on Han Shuo's face froze. He stood up and nodded at Stice with a smile, saying, "I still have something to attend to. Sorry, I'll take my leave first." Then, Han Shuo opened the door and walked out without another word. Han Shuo definitely couldn't accept this way of splitting the profits. Han Shuo couldn't be bothered to entertain such insincere partners. "Wait, there's still room for negotiation." Stice shouted with a forced smile when he saw that Han Shuo had turned to leave. His face was gloomy, and his back was facing Han Shuo. "There's nothing to discuss. I'm really not interested in cooperating with the God Swamp Pharmacy." "Excuse me," Han Shuo said without turning his head and walked out of the room. "Rude brat, I'm going to reason with you today. I'd like to see what you're so proud of in the field of medicine refinement." Ghoulie, who was guarding the door, immediately glared at Han Shuo the moment she saw Han Shuo coming out. She blocked Han Shuo's path and screamed shrilly, "I don't have time for your nonsense." Han Shuo felt that he had been tricked by the God Swamp Pharmacy and was in a bad mood. Seeing that old Gu was taking advantage of his seniority in front of him, Han Shuo immediately pushed Ghoulie away and said coldly. He ignored Ghoulie, who was stumbling, and strode across the banquet hall. Ghoulie had never been treated so rudely before. When she finally steadied herself, she realized that Han Shuo had already left. When she saw the gloating gazes around her, Ghoulie almost fainted from anger. She screamed, "Damn brat, I'm not done with you." After Han Shuo left, the door of the room where he talked to Stice closed again. A side door suddenly opened. An elderly man with a head full of white hair and a face as translucent as jade walked out with a tranquil face. He took a glance at the dwarf Stice and said in an indifferent voice, "This youngster is extremely ambitious. He won't share the medicine for petty gains. It seems that this method won't work. Master, why don't we just get rid of him and extract the memories in his soul? Stai suggested with a gloomy face. He was extremely angry after being humiliated by Han Shuo. The old man shook his head and calmly said, "Although I don't know how he escaped from Avery, it is obvious that this brat isn't as simple as he seems. Unless absolutely necessary, we should not resort to violence. We, the God Swamp Pharmacy, have been operating in the City of Shadows for many years. Do you think that we can handle a small character that popped out of nowhere? Since he doesn't know what's good for him, we will teach him a lesson." "Master, you mean?" Stice looked at the old man respectfully. "Just like how we dealt with henna medicine, we will first tarnish the reputation of his medicines. His medicines are his foundation. As long as those people lose confidence in his medicines, I don't think he will be able to survive in the City of Shadows." "Humph, the reason why those large family clans are willing to give in to him is because of his medicines. If they find out that there's something wrong with his medicines, he will be driven out of the City of Shadows without us having to do anything," the old man said as he stroked his messy white hair. "Understood, hee," Stice said with a sinister smile. "What did you talk to him about just now? Why are you so angry?" Andrina immediately asked Han Shuo as soon as they walked out of the God Swamp Pharmacy. Before Han Shuo entered the room, Andrina tactfully retreated to the side. As she was a little girl, no one paid any attention to her. When Han Shuo walked out of the room, she appeared out of nowhere and followed behind Han Shuo. "This God Swamp Pharmacy wants to swallow up my medicine shop. Hee, they want me to share my medicine recipes with them? What a beautiful dream. Do they really think that I'm a pushover?" Han Shuo said angrily. After walking out of the God Swamp Pharmacy, Han Shuo turned his head to look at the towering buildings around him. He thought to himself, "One day, your God Swamp Pharmacy will have no place in the City of Shadows. Damn it! Brian!" Anaito hastily walked over with an anxious expression. "What's wrong?" Han Shuo's heart sank when he saw Anaito in such a hurry. He knew that something must have happened. "Carmelita has returned to the city." Anaito let out a light sigh. His face was unsightly as he continued, "But she is seriously injured and has yet to regain consciousness. It's hard to say if she can hold on. Lord Andre knows that your medicines are miraculous, and has sent me to look for you at top speed." Han Shuo's expression changed when he heard that Carmelita was seriously injured. He knew that Carmelita had been searching for his whereabouts for a period of time. He had personally visited all the major fortresses in the City of Shadows. Now that he heard that Carmelita was injured, Han Shuo immediately shouldered the greater part of the responsibility. "Let's go!" Han Shuo immediately followed Anaito to the saint residence with a gloomy face. Due to Carmelita's ugly appearance, Han Shuo naturally would not have any other thoughts about her. However, after going through trials and tribulations together, Han Shuo understood that Carmelita considered him a true friend. Now that Carmelita was injured because of him, Han Shuo immediately regarded the murderer who injured Carmelita as his main enemy. With Carmelita's formidable strength and the House of Saint being the dominant power in the City of Shadows, who would dare to attack her? God hunters? Han Shuo kept pondering along the way. Han Shuo's mind was in a mess. Worried about Carmelita's injuries, he unknowingly increased his speed and left Anaito behind. Only Andrina was traveling side by side with him. This caused Anaito to look at Han Shuo and Andrina strangely. She couldn't understand how Han Shuo could travel so fast. When they were about to arrive at the saint residence, Andrina suddenly said, "I'll wait for you outside," and soon after, she vanished. Han Shuo was worried about Carmelita and did not pay her any attention. When Han Shuo arrived at the saint residence, he discovered that Andre was personally waiting for him at the entrance. At this moment, Andre's left pupil was dark purple. He was emitting a dense, sinister aura. It was a stark contrast to his usual gentleness. "You're here." Andre had been pondering about something with a gloomy face. When he saw Han Shuo, his expression relaxed and he hastily said, "Follow me." inside a secret chamber. The strong smell of medicine assaulted their nostrils. Several healers were holding glistening radiance in their hands. The radiance continuously fell on Carmelita, who was covered in cuts and bruises. At this moment, Carmelita's entire body was covered in wounds that looked like they had been cut by knives. Her skin was split open and her flesh was split open. Inside the small secret chamber were City Lord Wallace of the City of Shadows and a few of the most important members of the House of Saint. After Andre brought Han Shu into the chamber, he only needed to take one look at Carmelita, who was lying in a medical container, to know how serious her injuries were. "Elder brother, I've brought her," Andre said to City Lord Wallace in a low voice. Wallace nodded, pointed at Carmelita, who was lying in the glass container, and said to Han Shu, "Her injuries are very serious. She has yet to wake up. I don't know if she can hold on." "Get everyone out," Han Shu suddenly said in a deep voice. "Brat, who do you think you are? You are just a pharmacist, not a specialized healer. What can you possibly do under such circumstances?" The few best healers in the City of Shadows who were concentrating on treating Carmelita's injuries glared at Han Shu angrily when they saw that Han Shu had immediately chased them away. Andre, who had brought Han Shu over, was also shocked. He did not expect that Han Shu would be so bold. Generally speaking, such injuries would be treated by specialized healers. Pharmacists would only provide some special medicines. Andre had brought Han Shu here because he wanted him to be his assistant and trust in the medicines he refined. He had never thought that Han Shu would be the one to take charge of the situation. Without looking at anyone, Han Shu stared at City Lord Wallace of the City of Shadows and said solemnly, "Let me do it. I am confident that I can make Carmelita recover to her original state. I have no intention of bragging or joking at such a critical moment." Wallace's eyes suddenly lit up when he heard Han Shu's words. He waved his hand to stop the protests of the healers and said in a deep voice, "All of you get out." He was the most powerful man in the City of Shadows. The prestige he had accumulated over the years was not something that these healers would dare to defy. Even though they were full of complaints, they had no choice but to obediently obey. They put down the medical instruments in their hands and left the small treatment room in a single file. "And the rest of you, leave!" Wallace ordered after taking another glance at the immediate family members of the House of Saint. Those people also left with their heads lowered. Before they left, they sized up Han Shu with strange gazes. Their gazes seemed to be saying, "If anything were to happen to Carmelita, don't even think about leaving this place alive. Do your best." Wallace patted on Han Shu's shoulder and consoled him in a low voice. He said, "Second brother, let's go." Wallace and Andre were the last to leave the treatment room. "Elder brother, do you believe in that youngster Brian?" Andre hesitated for a moment before he asked after exiting the treatment room. "I don't know. Let's bet on it. Those healers have been busy for half a day and there is still no sign of Carmelita waking up. I don't think we can count on them. That youngster, on the other hand, has a very bright gleam in his eyes. I didn't see it in any of those dejected pharmacists. Therefore, I think it's worth a gamble," Wallace said in a deep voice. "You mean, confidence?" Andre stared blankly for a moment before he asked. "That's right, confidence. When I saw that youngster's gleam of confidence, I feel that Carmelita can still be saved. Those healers, on the other hand, are all in a flurry. Their faces are gloomy and terrified. They are constantly conveying to me how powerless they are. How can I count on them?" Wallace replied in a low voice. Andre thought for a moment and nodded in agreement. But soon after, he sighed and said in a low voice, "I hope she can pull through this." With the help of Calvin's spirit's energy, the perception of his consciousness was increased by tenfold. Han Shu left a strong conviction in Carmelita's muddled divine soul to resist the divine energy of darkness in her body with all her might. Carmelita was, after all, a high god. Although she had yet to awaken, Her divine soul started to reorganize the divine energy of destruction in her body by relying on the strong conviction Han Shuo left behind. Han Shuo fed Carmelita a few medicinal pellets in one go. He only heaved a sigh of relief when he discovered that the divine energy of destruction in her body was gathering bit by bit. After resting for a while, Han Shuo wiped away the traces of him using demonic arts, and opened the door with a weary face. "How is it?" Wallace and the others had been guarding outside. When they saw Han Shuo come out, Wallace hastily asked. "She's fine. But it will take a very long time for her to fully recover." Han Shuo wiped the sweat on his forehead and suddenly said, "There are many divine energies in her body. The most powerful one is the divine energy of darkness. The assailant must be a high god. Also, I feel that the divine energy seems somewhat familiar." Andre's left pupil suddenly turned dark purple. His face turned ashen. He looked as though he had turned into a god of death. Chapter 7:16. Wallace nodded and did not say anything else. He went straight into the treatment room. He seemed to be very anxious about Carmelita's condition. Andre did not enter the room. He kept silent for a moment with an ugly expression. Suddenly, he looked deeply at Han Shuo and said, "You said that you felt that darkness divine energy seemed somewhat familiar? What do you mean?" Han Shuo did not think too much about it. As soon as he saw Andre's solemn face, he realized what Andre was suspecting. Han Shuo's face turned cold. That vague feeling suddenly became clear. He lowered his voice and said, "It's him. There's no mistaking it." Andre, of course, knew who Han Shuo was referring to. His expression turned even more unsightly. After another long period of silence, Andre seemed to be thinking about what to do. After a while, he said to Han Shuo in a low voice, "Don't make this matter known. I will investigate this thoroughly. If it really is that person, don't worry, he will not escape death." As the House of Saint could become the most powerful family in the City of Shadows, Han Shuo knew that Wallace and Andre were not benevolent people. After hearing Andre's assurance, Han Shuo knew that Avery would be dead if Andre were to learn of the situation. Therefore, Han Shuo did not say anything. Soon enough, Wallace came out of the room. After checking on Carmelita's injuries, his complexion looked much better. He nodded at Andre, indicating that Carmelita's life was no longer in danger. Then, he said to Han Shuo, "You have saved Carmelita's life twice. I won't make any unnecessary promises, but I know what I'm doing." For someone like Wallace to say so, Han Shuo believed that in the future, as long as he did not do anything that would harm the interests of the House of Saint, Han Shuo would be able to do as he pleased in the City of Shadows. "Elder brother, there are some things I would like to discuss with you alone," Andre said in a deep voice. "Brian, why don't you go back first?" Wallace smiled faintly at Han Shuo after an idea struck him. Han Shuo nodded and walked away from the two. Before Han Shuo could walk too far, the relatives of the House of Saint came up to him and asked about Han Shuo and Carmelita. Due to their low statuses, these people had been waiting outside the Saint residence all this time and were unaware of Carmelita's condition. After Han Shuo informed them that Carmelita was fine, he walked past the group of healers who were both respectful and fearful of him, and headed out of the Saint residence. The healers were all silently preparing themselves, waiting for Han Shuo to be unable to do anything to help. However, when they heard that Han Shuo had stabilized Carmelita's condition, all of them felt very conflicted. They no longer dared to look at Han Shuo with the slightest hint of contempt. On the way to the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy after leaving the Saint residence, Andrina suddenly appeared out of nowhere. "Why didn't you go in with me just now?" Han Shuo asked puzzledly after glancing at Andrina. "I heard that the City Lord of the City of Shadows is also inside. I was afraid that he could see through my true strength, so I didn't go in with you," Andrina answered honestly. Han Shuo stared blankly for a moment before he asked again. "Why are you afraid that Wallace will find out about your strength? Also, what kind of energy have you cultivated?" Why are you able to consume crystal coins to recover from your injuries? Hee hee. I will explain it to you in detail in the future. I can't tell you for now. Andrina replied smilingly and avoided Han Shuo's question. He was certain that Andrina was hiding some kind of secret. However, there was nothing Han Shuo could do if she was unwilling to reveal it. After all, Andrina's injuries had mostly recovered by now. Under such circumstances, Han Shuo couldn't force her. Although he was rather displeased, he had no choice but to let it go. The two soon returned to the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. Much to Han Shuo's surprise, Guli, the pharmacist whom he once humiliated in the God Swamp Pharmacy, was waiting for him at the entrance of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. As soon as Guli saw Han Shuo, she immediately shouted angrily, "Brat, I don't believe that you are that good at medicine refinement. If you can't prove to me that you didn't steal your medicine refinement recipe, I will not let you off." Han Shuo was rather annoyed. Ignoring Gu Li's attempts to stop him, he pushed Gu Li aside and headed straight for the Celestial Pro Pharmacy with Andrina. With his back facing Gu Li, he sneered, "I don't have any obligation to prove to you. Don't think that just because you have some status in the City of Mirages that everyone has to bow and scrape to you. We don't welcome you here. Don't stay here and be an eyesore." Han Shuo and Andrina had already entered the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. They locked the door from the inside and paid no attention to Gu Li, who was screaming in exasperation. Gu Li screamed hysterically outside the Celestial Pro Pharmacy for a while. Seeing that Han Shuo wasn't paying any attention to her, she finally left with her tail between her legs. 3 days later, Han Shuo, who was quietly cultivating in the middle of the night, suddenly sensed someone approaching. A few demon generals that Han Shuo had placed outside the Celestial Pro Pharmacy soon discovered that someone was approaching. During this period of time, Han Shuo had been on high alert, fearing that someone would come and cause trouble. When they discovered that someone was approaching, before Han Shuo could take any action, a group of Anito's divine guards that had been stationed nearby had snuck up to them. "What are you doing sneaking around here in the middle of the night? Hand over your divine tablet!" shouted one of the divine guards in a low voice. The few of them immediately surrounded the intruder. "I'm looking for Brian. What do you people want? Do you want to fight?" said the person fearlessly. He looked at the divine guards with an angry face. "Capture him!" The divine guards of the House of Saint, who were used to running amok in the City of Shadows, upon seeing that the intruder wasn't cooperating, immediately prepared to capture him. It was at this moment that one of the demon generals finally saw the appearance of the intruder. Although he was dressed in ragged clothes and cut a sorry figure like a beggar, Han Shuo could just barely make out that he was Akeley. This was the fellow that Han Shuo got to know as soon as he arrived on Elysium. His temper was as stubborn as ever. He would clamor for a fight at the slightest disagreement. After confirming that the intruder was Akeley, Han Shuo immediately rushed over. Before the two parties started fighting, Han Shuo arrived and hastily said, "He's my friend." Why would Mr. Brian have such a friend? Although the divine guards were puzzled, they did not dare to offend Han Shuo. They immediately retreated and stopped fighting. Han Shuo was currently a popular figure in the City of Shadows, while Akeley was behaving like a beggar. In the eyes of these divine guards, Akeley was a very suspicious person. "How did you become like this?" Leyland asked Akeley with an odd expression on his face. Before the two parted, Han Shuo had given Akeley quite a number of crystal coins. In addition, Akeley also had a portion of the neuroore in his possession. Logically speaking, no matter how bad he was doing, he shouldn't be in such a state. Therefore, Han Shuo found it very strange. Akeley's face turned rather unsightly. He seemed unwilling to talk about this matter in front of those divine guards. He forced a smile and said, "It's a long story, let's talk inside." Han Shuo gestured to the divine guards and they quietly withdrew. Akeley followed Han Shuo into the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. It wasn't long before Han Shuo became a celebrity in the City of Shadows. He was a figure that several large family clans strove to curry favor with. On the other hand, not only did Akeley fail to achieve great things with the crystal coins he had, but he also ended up in such a miserable state. The two of them couldn't help but sigh when they met. "Youngster, you sure have gotten rich fast. It hasn't been long since I last saw you, but after I asked around in the City of Shadows, all the divine guards knew your name. At first, I thought that the person they were talking about wasn't you. But when I heard that you had concocted some medicine, I was sure that it was you." "How unbelievable!" Akeley looked at Han Sho enviously. He had once eaten the medicinal pellets Han Sho gave him and naturally knew how miraculous Han Sho's medicinal pellets were. If it wasn't for Han Sho's celestial pro-pharmacy, Akeley wouldn't have believed that the most popular figure in the City of Shadows was the Han Sho he knew. "Haha, it's a long story." Even Han Sho himself did not expect that he would be able to make a fortune so quickly. He smilingly said, "Right, how did you end up in such dire straits? Before we parted, I left you quite a lot of crystal coins. Besides, you still have divine essence mines. There's no way you would end up like this, right? Don't mention those divine essence mines. It's because of those divine essence mines that I'm so unlucky." Akeley put on a furious face and told Han Sho about his recent experiences. After the two parted, Akeley first found a secluded place and absorbed all the divine essences containing destruction divine energy in his hand. His talent was truly outstanding. He had managed to break through to late-stage low-god realm just by relying on the divine essence mines he had. After absorbing all the destruction divine essences in his hand, Akeley discovered that his strength was progressing too slowly. Therefore, he decided to purchase a few divine weapons to increase his strength. However, the crystal coins Han Sho gave him were not enough to purchase the divine weapons he fancied. With no other choice, Akeley recklessly took out a few divine essences of wind in an attempt to make a trade. It was precisely those divine essences he took out that landed him in big trouble. As soon as he left the shop with the divine weapons, he was immediately targeted by others. What followed was a long period of pursuit. If it wasn't for Akeley's vast experience and great improvement in strength, he would have long been killed by those who coveted his divine essence mines. After trekking over mountains and rivers, Akeley managed to escape from those greedy pursuers with great difficulty. He no longer dared to take out his divine essence mines. The defenses of the forts and towns under the City of Shadows were far inferior to those in the City of Shadows. Akeley felt that only a place like the City of Shadows could allow him to sell his divine essences safely. On top of that, Han Sho had told him that he would be in the City of Shadows as well. Therefore, Akeley decided to come to the City of Shadows. Akeley, who was rather paranoid from being pursued, had been wandering around barren mountains and swamps. He had even encountered a few groups of god hunters along the way. By the time he arrived at the City of Shadows, he was already in such a miserable state. "Back when we parted ways, I told you not to rashly take out your divine essence mines. But you just wouldn't listen to me. It would be a wonder if you didn't get hunted down. But you sure are lucky to be able to make it to the City of Shadows alive under such circumstances. I truly admire you. Now that you have struck it rich, you start making sarcastic remarks? Who knew that those people would be so crazy? They would attack me as soon as I was alone. Every time, there would be several of them. If it wasn't for my top-notch fleeing skills, I would have long been killed by those bastards," Akeley said furiously. "Then why did you dare to compete with the divine guards just now? You should know that you are no match for those divine guards with your strength, right?" Han Sho put on a spurious smile. Hee hee. This is the City of Shadows. What do I have to fear? Do they have the guts to kill me? Akeley put on a smile and lamented. Damn it, I have finally understood the situation on Elysium. It seems that the way I used to do things on the Blue Ocean continent is no longer suitable. I can't run amok in the future. After hearing those words, Han Sho knew that Akeley's situation on Elysium had finally begun to change. But then again, it made sense. If Akeley had continued to act the way he did when he first arrived on Elysium, he probably wouldn't have survived until now. Elysium wasn't the blue ocean continent. Reality was cruel. But fortunately for Han Shaw, Akeley had recognized the situation. "What do you plan to do in the future?" asked Han Shaw. "Nothing much. I've traveled thousands of miles to the City of Shadows to seek refuge with you. You wouldn't be so disloyal as to ignore me, would you?" Akeley had gone through thick and thin with Han Shaw. He knew that although Han Shaw was cruel to his enemies, he treated his friends well. Therefore, Akeley was determined to stick with Han Shaw. "Oh?" Han Shaw stared blankly for a moment before he forced a smile and said, "I'm just running a pharmacy. Why would you want to stick with me? Don't give me that. I've asked around. You are doing so well in the City of Shadows. There's nothing wrong with me following you. In any case, since I'm here, you can't just ignore me. We have gone through thick and thin together." Akeley laughed mischievously. He casually found a place to lie down comfortably and mumbled to himself, "My goodness, this place of yours is really nice. It's been a long time since I've had a good rest." "Right, you go about your business. I'll keep an eye on the door for you, all right?" To Han Shaw, it didn't matter if Akeley was as reckless as before. If Akeley was as reckless as before, Han Shaw wouldn't have dared to keep him around. But now that Akeley seemed to have recognized the situation, and based on Han Shaw's understanding of Akeley, Han Shaw felt that Akeley wasn't a bad person. After thinking for a moment, Han Shaw nodded and said, "If you don't mind my small shop, you can stay. After all, my pharmacy is really lacking in manpower." "That would be great." "Haha, I knew you are a loyal fella." Akeley felt at ease. "All right, you stay in my pharmacy for the time being. I don't have anything for you to do right now, but I'm sure there will be something for you to do in the future," Han Shaw said. It was impossible for Han Shaw to stay in the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy all the time. With Akeley keeping an eye on the door, Han Shaw wouldn't have to worry too much. Besides, Han Shaw's goal wasn't as simple as the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy. One day, he would have his own family clan and perhaps his own divine guards. And Akeley was a very good warrior. "Good. For you to be able to gain a foothold in the City of Shadows so quickly, I will surely live a good life if I follow you." Haha. Akeley's words were meant to flatter Han Shaw. But it turned out that he was right. Just like that, other than the mysterious and unfathomable Andrina, the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy gained the somewhat deranged Akeley. Chapter 717 ******* at the Saint Residence. Wallace, the City Lord of the City of Shadows, had been in a bad mood recently. He had changed from his usual methodical approach to the management of the City of Shadows. He had become resolute and decisive in dealing with the affairs of the City of Shadows. He had begun to focus on the issue of the 7 Divine Guards. There were a total of 7 Chiefs of Divine Guards in the City of Shadows. The top 3 Chiefs of Divine Guards were all from the House of Saint. The remaining 4 Chiefs of Divine Guards were experts from the 4 major family clans. With the excuse of Carmelita's serious injury and the fact that the Dominions of Water and Life had infiltrated the City of Shadows, Wallace blamed the negligence of the 7 Chiefs of Divine Guards and took the opportunity to reorganize the 7 Corps. Everyone knew that Wallace was very angry about Carmelita's serious injury. During this sensitive period, no one dared to disobey Wallace's orders. Some of the orders that affected the City of Shadows were smoothly passed down. Avery was not in the City of Shadows for the time being. Therefore, several chiefs of the 5th Corps were assigned to the City of Shadows. The reason was that the 5th Corps might be short of manpower in Avery's absence. All this while, other than the top 3 Chiefs of Divine Guards belonging to the House of Saint, the other 4 Chiefs of Divine Guards were under the control of the 4 major family clans. Wallace had never interfered with them. This time, his actions had caused a great deal of controversy. However, Wallace firmly suppressed it. The chiefs of the 5th Corps were complaining about it. The Patriarch of the House of Lavers was also very displeased. However, under Wallace's wrath, no one dared to say anything. They merely assumed that Wallace's actions were because he was in a bad mood. They believed that he would change after Carmelita recovered. Andre was the only one who understood his elder brother's intentions. He secretly cooperated with Wallace and began to investigate Avery's actions. The House of Saint was the most powerful force in the City of Shadows. When they were serious about investigating a matter, very few schemes and machinations could escape the eyes of Wallace and Andre, the two vicious and merciless brothers. Soon enough, with Han Shuo's help, the two brothers who had suspected Avery as a suspect gradually found some clues. Some plans and operations were formulated, perfected, and carried out in the dark. On this day, Wallace, who had been in a gloomy mood for a long time, finally showed some gentleness on his face. Looking at Carmelita, who was slowly waking up, he said with concern, "Everything is fine now. Don't worry." Carmelita's body was still very weak. Although the divine energy of darkness in her body had been temporarily suppressed by her tenacious willpower, most of the destruction divine energy in her body had been consumed. Fortunately, the House of Saint was rich and generous. They were not stingy with their precious divine essences. The moment she opened her eyes, she noticed that her father was holding a heavy bag of destruction divine essences in his hand. "Father!" Looking at the concerned Wallace in front of her, Carmelita called out softly. "Don't talk. Rest well. Take this bag of divine crystals and absorb them. Heal your injuries as soon as possible." "Haha! I didn't expect that you would be seriously injured twice in such a short time. The House of Saint is running low on destruction divine essences. But don't worry, I have sent people to contact the other cities and will exchange some divine essences of other elements that the House of Saint has. You just need to recuperate in peace," said Wallace softly. "I'm feeling much better." Carmelita struggled for a moment. Wallace hastily helped her up. After she sat properly, he bunched his brows and asked, "Other than me, who else in that group of divine guards survived?" Wallace sighed softly and shook his head. "Karina, she was covering for me." Carmelita's eyes suddenly overflowed with tears. "I know. You just need to recuperate in peace. We have already found the culprit. Anyone who dares to attack you, no matter who they are, will not be able to escape death," assured Wallace. Of the two House of Saint Divine Guards that went with Carmelita, not a single one managed to escape alive. Carmelita was only able to escape the calamity when she arrived at Skyorchid Fort, where the Chief of Divine Guards, Aobashi, was temporarily stationed. For Carmelita's sake, Karina sacrificed her divine soul in order to buy her some time. "I couldn't see the shadows of those people in the canopy of darkness. I have no idea who did it. But most of them cultivate in the energy of death, destruction, and darkness." Carmelita slowly closed her eyes, recalled for a moment, and said to Wallace, "Since they dared to attack you and used the canopy of darkness to conceal their presence and traces, they must not want you to know their identities. Don't think too much about it. Father will find them one by one." Wallace comforted Carmelita gently so that she would not have to worry about the situation before she was seriously injured. "By the way, you were able to wake up this time because of that little guy called Brian." Wallace did not want Carmelita to wallow in the pain of Karina's death. Therefore, he changed the topic and brought up Han Shuo. "He's fine?" "Haha. I should have known that he would be fine. He's more cunning than anyone else." Carmelita forced a smile and asked Wallace, "Is he in the City of Shadows? I want to see him." Wallace revealed a troubled expression. After hesitating for a moment, he replied, "He is fine at the moment. But your injuries have not stabilized yet. It's better to wait for a while. It won't be too late to see him after you have purged the divine energy of darkness in your body." Carmelita knew that Wallace was concerned for her well-being. She nodded and softly replied, "I understand. All right, rest well. Stabilizing your injuries as soon as possible is of utmost importance. I will take my leave now." Wallace stood up and walked out of the room smilingly. After arriving at a secret chamber in the Saint residence, Wallace asked Andre, who had been sitting there silently, "How did it go? We don't have conclusive evidence. But according to what Brian said, the divine energy of darkness left in Carmelita's body, the fact that that guy has been out of the city for such a long time, and the clues we found, we can deduce that it is indeed him." Andre replied in a low voice with a gloomy face. "We don't need any more evidence. We don't need to continue investigating the ins and outs of this matter. I trust your judgment." Wallace decisively made his decision. After taking a short pause, he said in a deep voice, "Send a message to Aobashi and the other two. Have them search for Avery's traces with all their might. Once they find his location, report to me immediately. We will arrest him immediately. Brother, we don't have any evidence. Won't we?" Andre's spirit was lifted. But soon after, he bunched his brows as though he had just recalled the House of Lavers. "It doesn't matter. Since we have already made our move, we don't have to worry about anything. Keep a close eye on the House of Lavers. Once it is proven that that guy is related to Avery, we will exterminate the entire House of Lavers." Wallace was indeed ruthless. Once he took action, he would not leave any leeway. Currently, there is no evidence to prove that the Patriarch of the House of Lavers, Field, is involved in this matter. But I will do as you say. If Field really doesn't know about this, what should we do?" Andre asked. "If he really doesn't know anything, we will capture all of Avery's trusted aides in the Fifth Corps. When the time comes, I will personally explain this matter to Field and see what his attitude is. If he doesn't know what's good for him, we will eliminate the House of Lavers from the City of Shadows," Wallace said in a deep voice. "Understood." Andre nodded. He knew that his big brother would not show any mercy once he took action. The reason why the House of Saint was able to stand tall in the City of Shadows for so many years was because they had such a decisive and ruthless patriarch. "All right, before we take action against the House of Lavers, you will personally explain the ins and outs of this matter to the patriarchs of the other three major family clans. We must not disappoint the patriarchs of the other three major family clans. We must make them understand that the House of Lavers deserves all of this," Wallace instructed after thinking for a moment. Andre nodded and expressed that he understood. After thinking for a moment, just as Andre was about to leave, he suddenly asked, "Oh right, big brother, that youngster Brian has saved Carmelita's life twice. Shouldn't we express our gratitude? That youngster is not bad," Wallace praised when Andre mentioned Han Sho. After thinking for a moment, he said in a somewhat vexed manner, "That youngster has a firm will and a sharp spirit. On top of that, he is an expert in medicine refinement. He is indeed a rare talent. However, this youngster's strength is a little too weak. I'm afraid that if we give him too many benefits for the time being, he won't be able to accept them all of a sudden. Otherwise, why don't we just hand over the Fifth Corps to him?" Andre's heart skipped a beat when he heard that Wallace intended to hand over the Fifth Corps to Han Sho. He thought to himself, "This is an opportunity for me to reach the heavens in a single bound. There are so many experts in the City of Shadows. Every single one of them would be jealous of the position vacated by Avery. Once Han Sho becomes a chief of Divine Guards in the City of Shadows, as long as he possesses sufficient strength, he can establish his own family clan." But after thinking for a moment, Andre shook his head slightly and said in a bitter smile, "It's a pity that youngster is too weak. He won't be able to convince the others to take over the Fifth Corps." "Yeah, that's what I was thinking. That kid has a good relationship with Carmelita. If he were to take over the Fifth Corps, we would be able to save a lot of trouble. It's a pity that he's too weak. Forget it, I'm just saying. We'll see how it goes when the time comes." Wallace shook his head helplessly. He didn't want to discuss this further with Andre. Han Sho did not know that Wallace intended to hand over the coveted position of the Fifth Corps to him. Had he known that Wallace intended to do so, he might have been willing to take the risk and prove his strength in order to seize this opportunity to reach the heavens in a single bound. After all, by taking over the Fifth Corps, Han Sho would be able to freely form his own team of Divine Guards. With a powerful force under his command and the wealth he obtained from his pharmacy, he would be able to smoothly establish another powerful family clan in the City of Shadows. He might even be able to replace the former House of Lavers and become one of the 5 major family clans in the City of Shadows. Setting aside these beautiful prospects for the time being, Han Shuo was currently faced with an extremely troublesome matter. If this matter was not handled properly, Han Shuo might not even be able to maintain his transcendent status in the City of Shadows, let alone establishing his own family clan. How is this possible? Han Shuo cried out involuntarily when he saw Anaito, who wore a solemn face. I don't know what's going on either. However, after a member of the House of Kisa took your medicine of tranquility, not only did he fail to stabilize his current realm, his body seemed to have suffered from a backlash. Not only has he failed to advance a single step, but his realm has also regressed. I am here to inform you of this matter, explained Anaito. It is impossible for the medicine I refined to have such a situation. There must be a problem somewhere. It is very possible that the fellow did not take the medicine according to my instructions. Han Shuo had absolute confidence in the medicines he personally refined. He did not believe that such a problem would occur. I have just received the news. I don't know the details yet. Why don't you go to the House of Kisa and take a look? Suggested Anaito. Han Shuo nodded and immediately headed for the House of Kisa under Anaito's lead without a second thought. Andrina, who was supposed to continue devouring crystal coins on the 3rd floor, silently floated down and landed beside Anaito, giving him a big fright. With sufficient crystal coins to consume, Andrina's injuries healed faster and faster. However, the mysterious and unfathomable aura on her body grew fainter and fainter. Han Shuo knew that as Andrina's injuries healed, her ability to conceal her strength also grew stronger. Unlike Akeley, Andrina was determined to follow him. Han Shuo had no choice but to let her follow him. Anaito sized up Andrina, who had silently appeared. He was startled by the unapproachable expression on her face. He looked at Han Shuo, who was silently walking forward, and thought to himself, so this youngster has such a hobby. No wonder he has never properly communicated with any of the young and beautiful women in the City of Shadows after coming to the city for so long. Instead, he likes to hang out with Miss Carmelita. So it turns out that all strange people have strange hobbies. Suddenly, a pair of cold eyes fell on Anaito. Anaito, who was having filthy thoughts, suddenly discovered that the ice-cold little girl was staring at him. For no reason, Anaito felt a chill all over his body. He subconsciously let out 2 hollow laughs and did not dare to look into Andrina's eyes. If you dare to have any filthy thoughts again, I will kill you. Andrina coldly groaned and warned. I wouldn't dare, Anaito hastily said. But as soon as those words left his mouth, he immediately realized that it was inappropriate. He thought to himself, why would I be afraid of a little girl? It doesn't make sense. Han Shuo paid no attention to the little disturbance between Anaito and Andrina. He was thinking about the medicinal pellets. Soon, he arrived at the Kisa residence. After reporting his name, the guards of the Kisa residence coldly escorted Han Shuo to the Kisa residence. Those guards looked at Han Shuo as though they were looking at a swindler. This made Han Shuo feel very uncomfortable. What's going on? Asked Han Shuo with his brows bunched when he saw Rudrasi in a gymnasium inside one of the buildings in the Kisa residence. Rudrasi was in charge of the 6th Corps of Divine Guards. He was an influential person in the City of Shadows. The last time he met Han Shuo, he was very respectful and courteous. But this time, he did not show any courtesy. After coldly sizing up Han Shuo, Rudrasi lightly groaned and said, "You sure are fast." Rudrasi then pointed at a young man who was convulsing on the ground and said furiously, "You sold a good medicine. My nephew is in this state because he took your medicine of tranquility. Your medicine is so unstable and has such terrifying side effects. Why didn't you tell him in advance? You caused his cultivation to regress instead of advancing. And yet you still dare to come? I have sold so many of my medicines and many people have taken them. This is the first time such a situation has happened. I believe that this has nothing to do with my medicine. He must have taken it improperly. There must be some misunderstanding. Han Shuo swept a glance at that young man and said with his brows bunched. There is no misunderstanding. I have interrogated him. He took the medicine according to the prescription of your medicine. There is no mistake. There must be something wrong with your medicine that caused this situation. How dare you deny it? Rudrasi took a deep breath and suppressed the anger in his heart. He said in a gloomy voice, I know that you have a close relationship with Carmelita. You even saved her life a few days ago. That is why I am speaking to you in such an amiable manner. Otherwise, don't even think of standing in front of me right now. Rudrasi's attitude made Han Shuo even angrier. He coldly gazed at that young man who was trembling on the ground. He raised his head and said to Rudrasi in a sarcastic tone, So many people have taken my medicine. Why is it that none of them are affected except for him? How would I know? Maybe the others haven't acted up yet. How dare you be so arrogant when there is a problem with your medicine? If it weren't for the House of Saint, I would have taken you down right now. Rudrasi could no longer suppress the anger in his heart. He immediately bellowed in a low voice. Beside him, several divine guards from the 6th Corps had surrounded Han Shuo. The reason why Rudrasi was so friendly to Han Shuo was because of the medicine. Now that he saw that the medicine had such a side effect, he immediately felt that he had been deceived. Therefore, his attitude towards Han Shuo, a mere low god, had completely changed. He did not immediately take action because he was apprehensive of the relationship between Han Shuo and the House of Saint. Lord Rudrasi, I hope that you will not act rashly before the matter is clarified. I am in charge of Mr. Bryan's safety under the orders of Lord Erebus and Lord Andre. I hope that your lordship will not make things difficult for our 3rd Corps. Anaito hastily said when he saw that Rudrasi was about to take Mr. Bryan away. It was at this moment that Andrina, who was standing beside Han Shuo, suddenly stepped forward. She stood in front of Han Shuo and looked at Rudrasi with hostility. Han Shuo grabbed Andrina's little hand and pulled her back. If Andrina was allowed to do as she pleased without clarifying the situation, the good reputation of the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy might very well be ruined. Han Shuo was counting on the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy to earn him a large amount of crystal coins. He knew that he could not be reckless at this moment. In short, you must give my family clan an explanation. When Rudrasi heard Annette mentioning Erebus and Andre's names, he didn't dare to act recklessly and shouted angrily. Rudrasi was startled when he saw that Andrina had stepped forward. For a moment, he felt that Andrina was an extremely formidable opponent. However, that feeling vanished without a trace when Han Shuo grabbed Andrina's little hand. Rudrasi thought that it was just a momentary hallucination. He was in a fit of anger at the moment, and did not think too much about it. Let me take a look at the situation first. Han Shuo no longer paid any attention to Rudrasi. He secretly decided that he would never sell any medicinal pellets to the House of Kisa again after this matter was clarified. Rudrasi's attitude made him very unhappy. Chapter 7:18. Han Shuo squatted down and placed his hand on the man's back to examine the condition of his body. The news that Han Shuo had saved Carmelita 2 days ago had spread throughout the City of Shadows. Otherwise, Rudrasi wouldn't have allowed Han Shuo to do as he pleased. With Han Shuo's hand on the man's back and Rudrasi facing him, it was impossible for him to see what Han Shuo was doing. Han Shuo's demonic yuan was like tiny, formless snakes that slowly seeped into the man's body in an attempt to find the source of the disorder in his body. Han Shuo was well aware of the composition and effects of the medicine of Jade Pearl. With the miraculous demonic yuan, he quickly figured out what was going on. Something's wrong! Han Shuo bunched his brows and said in a deep voice. What's causing the convulsions in his body is another type of medicine. I can guarantee that the medicine of Jade Pearl I refined does not contain that type of medicine. Did he swallow some other medicine? No. I didn't. The man opened his mouth with great difficulty. His voice was very weak. Kid, you aren't trying to shirk your responsibility, are you? Ridgersea immediately rebuked his nephew. It was obvious that he trusted his nephew more. That's impossible! Han Sho coldly shouted. There is absolutely no other type of medicine in my medicine. There must be a problem. My lord! It was at this moment that another divine guard rushed over hastily. What is it? Ridgersea was in a fit of rage. When he saw that the divine guard was flustered, he impatiently gave him a slap. The slap caused the divine guard's body to sway. When Ridgersea finally stabilized his body, a trickle of blood flowed from the corner of his mouth. However, he hastily explained. A divine guard was accidentally injured in the gymnasium. After consuming young Master Gregor's medicine of rejuvenation, not only did his injuries not stabilize, he immediately died. Han Sho's face jolted upon hearing those words. Ridgersea immediately flew into a rage. He glared at Han Sho and said, How dare you deny that your medicine isn't the problem? Once is fine, but twice. How dare you deny it? Arrest him! Lord Ridgersea! Naito shouted anxiously. He intended to remind Han Sho that Erebus and Andre were protecting him. Say no more! Even if Andre and Erebus were here, I would still pursue this matter. If there is any responsibility, I will bear all of it. Capture this brat immediately and break his arms and legs. Later, I will personally question Andre and Erebus about this matter. I want to see how they will defend such a swindler. Ridgersea's face was cold. He was truly enraged. The Sixth Corps Divine Guards no longer hesitated after hearing Ridgersea's words. They immediately surrounded Han Sho. Several of the Divine Guards brandished their divine weapons and aimed them at Han Sho's neck. As soon as Han Sho heard Ridgersea's order to break his arms and legs first, he became furious. There was clearly something fishy about this matter. Ridgersea did not listen to Han Sho's explanation and insisted that Han Sho was a swindler. Such behavior had already violated some of the rules of the City of Shadows. However, Han Sho wasn't worried that Ridgersea would break his arms and legs. Given Han Sho's monstrous regenerative ability, even if his internal organs were destroyed, he could quickly regenerate them, let alone broken bones. Besides, Han Sho believed that once he unleashed his invincible omen body, would the attacks of those mid-god divine guards really have any effect on him? Han Sho was not willing to endure such humiliation. He immediately gathered the energy in his body, ready to retaliate the moment those divine guards attacked him. Even if things escalated to the point where even the House of Saint could no longer protect him, Han Sho didn't believe that he would have a bad life if he left the City of Shadows. At most, it would take him a little more time. However, before Han Sho could act, Andrina, who had been cold and indifferent all this while, suddenly moved. A dazzling radiance revolved around Han Sho. After a series of crackling noises, all the divine weapons pointed at Han Sho suddenly exploded. Those divine guards of the Sixth Corps who were holding the divine weapons were sent flying. Andrina, who was as cold as ice, stood proudly in front of Han Sho. Her eyes were filled with murderous intent as she stared at Ridgersea. She did not utter a single word. Naito, who was about to persuade Han Sho not to act rashly, was stunned on the spot when he saw such an unforeseen event. He did not know what to do. Who are you? How dare you injure my Sixth Corps Divine Guards? You are making an enemy out of the City of Shadows. As the chief of the Sixth Corps of the City of Shadows, Ridgersea was not an easy character to deal with. He was initially astonished by Andrina's strength. But soon, he came to his senses and skillfully accused Andrina of a major crime. Han Sho, who was about to attack, was also stunned. He turned to look at Andrina, who was tightly shielding him. For a moment, he did not know what to do. If you dare hurt him, I will kill you! Andrina said in a bone-chilling voice as she looked at Ridgersy with her ice-cold eyes. Ridgersy, who was about to make a move, suddenly felt that he was being affected by a strange magnetic field. In the next moment, a strong sense of crisis made him subconsciously want to take a few steps back. Looking at Angelina, who was threatening him, Ridgersy felt a chill in his heart for no reason. He could not estimate the strength of this little girl. "Let's go!" After keeping silent for a moment, Hans Shaw suddenly spoke. He shot a cold glance at the hesitant Ridgersy and said, "Give me some time. I will get to the bottom of this matter. My medicines will not have any problems. I can guarantee that. Don't leave." "He has injured so many divine guards," shouted a member of the House of Kisa who appeared out of nowhere. No one paid any attention to the member of the Sixth Corps. The divine guards stared at Ridgersy and waited for his decision. At this moment, Hans Schuh and Andrina had started walking towards the exit. However, they were on high alert, ready to deal with any attack from the House of Kisa at any moment. Ridgersy stared at Andrina in silence for a long while. Suddenly, like a ferocious beast, he pounced at Andrina. This Ridgersy was different from the person with the same name Andrina killed at Green Fire Swamp. He possessed early-stage high god strength and cultivated in the energy of death. While in midair, Ridgersy's face suddenly turned as pale as a sheet. His entire body shrunk and shriveled in an instant. A bone suddenly appeared in his hand after a flash of phosphorescence. Soon after, the domain of divinity of death enveloped him. The bone turned into a beam of ghostly light as it shot towards Andrina. Andrina, who was protecting Hans Shaw, stared at Ridgersy with a cold glint in her eyes. She felt that Ridgersy did not know how to appreciate her kindness. In an instant, her body turned translucent like a crystal. Even her little dress started glowing. Before anyone could see what happened, intense energy fluctuations suddenly erupted from her body. It was as though a whirlpool had suddenly sprung out from her body and collided with Ridgersy. Bang! In the dazzling light, there was an explosion. Ridgersy had charged over at an extremely fast speed, but he retreated even faster. He landed on the ground in an instant with a face filled with disbelief. He turned to look at Andrina. The cold glint in her eyes grew even more intense. She stared fixedly at Ridgersy and took a few deep breaths. Then, a dazzling radiance flashed from her body and she pounced at Ridgersy once again. Andrina's attack was too fast. At this moment, Hans Shaw was powerless to stop her even if he wanted to. Seeing that a battle of life and death was unavoidable, Hans Shaw decided that he should call Akeley and leave the City of Shadows as soon as possible. At this moment, two silhouettes suddenly appeared out of nowhere and landed beside Ridgersy in an instant. A loud rumble sounded from the dense darkness. By the time the darkness dispersed, two people were standing in front of Ridgersy. Hans Shaw was already familiar with Andre. However, what surprised him was why Andre would appear at this moment. The other effeminate man wearing ink-black armor cried out in surprise. "How powerful! Who is this little girl?" Upon finishing those words, the man looked at Andrina with an astonished expression. Andrina took a deep breath and instantly retreated to Hans Shaw. She grabbed Hans Shaw and said in a low voice, "There are 3 of them. I haven't fully recovered from my injuries. I'm no match for them. Don't worry, they won't do anything," Hans Shaw consoled. He bowed from afar and said, "Greetings, Lord Andre, Lord Erebus." As soon as the effeminate man spoke, Hans Shaw could guess his identity. When Hans Shaw was trapped by Braavst, he had heard Erebus's voice. Therefore, he would always pay extra attention to such powerful figures. Therefore, when Erebus cried out in surprise, Hans Shaw immediately guessed his identity from his voice. Andre and Erebus were looking at Andrina in shock. They only came back to their senses when they heard Hans Shaw's greeting from afar. They nodded at Hans Shaw in greeting. Erebus smiled in a friendly manner. His effeminate face was filled with amusement. He nodded at Hans Shaw and said, "Thank you for your potion. It's truly a magical thing. What kind of bullshit magical potion is this? 2 members of my family have already been harmed by it. Erebus and Lord Andre, even if you are taking care of this kid, you have to give me justice, Rudrasi said angrily as he panted heavily. It seemed that he had suffered a little in the fight with Andrina. Brian, what's going on? Andre had a very good impression of Han Shuo, especially after he discovered that the little girl beside Han Shuo was an unfathomably mysterious expert. He immediately raised the importance of Han Shuo by a notch. 2 members of the House of Kisa have taken my potion. Something happened to them. I only took a look at one of them and discovered that there was another kind of potion in his body. I am certain that it is not from my Xuanji pharmacy. Before I could explain the situation, another member of the House of Kisa got into trouble. Rudrasi insisted that it was related to my potion and refused to listen to my explanation. He planned to break my limbs and capture me, explained Han Shuo. After Han Shuo finished his explanation, Andre, Erebus, Rudrasi, and the divine guards of the House of Kisa were looking at Andrina, who was holding hands with Han Shuo. After a while, Andre let out a light cough and said to Rudrasi, who was wearing a furious face, "There is something fishy about this matter. I believe that it has nothing to do with Blair. So many people in the City of Shadows have been fine after taking the potion. Even the divine guards of the House of Saint and Erebus are safe and sound. We can attest to this. From this aspect, perhaps there is something wrong with those 2 members of your family." "How is that possible?" shouted Rudrasi. However, as Andre and Erebus had just saved him and the strength of the House of Saint was clear for all to see, Rudrasi's words sounded a little lacking in confidence. When Rudrasi saw the exchange of glances between Han Shuo and Andre, he suddenly realized that he had misjudged one thing. Originally, he thought that Han Shuo had a simple relationship with the House of Saint and that Andre and Erebus wouldn't disrespect him for a puny low god. But judging from the current situation, it was obvious that the 2 were protecting Han Shuo. This, Rudrasi was startled and immediately put on an embarrassed face. He turned to Han Shuo and said, That, Brian. I'm sorry. I'm really sorry. That, Brian. It's all right. Han Shuo put on a faint smile as though he didn't mind the matter at all. He stood up, bowed to Andre and Erebus, and straightforwardly announced, "From today onwards, the Celestial Pearl Pharmacy will no longer do business with your House of Kisa." Upon finishing those words, Han Shuo pulled Andrina and walked out of the room. Arg! Rudrasi was filled with regret. He knew that he had made a grave mistake this time when he saw Han Shuo leaving. Chapter 719. Andre and Erebus put on a gloating smile and ignored Rudrasi. They immediately followed after Han Shuo and Erebus. The 2 were now filled with curiosity towards Angelina. They didn't understand how a little girl like her could possess such terrifying strength, and even more so didn't understand why she would follow Han Shuo so obediently. Therefore, they were anxious to clarify the situation. Outside the Kisa residence, Andre and Erebus had caught up to Han Shuo. When Han Shuo saw Andre and Erebus following behind, he slowed down his pace and smilingly said, "Thank you for your help just now. Otherwise, I'm afraid it would have been very difficult for me to walk out of the Kisa residence." "Not at all. With such a powerful expert by your side, the Kisa residence wouldn't have had much of an advantage in a fight." Erebus swept a glance at Han Shuo before turning his attention to Andrina. He asked puzzledly, "Young lady, what kind of energy did you use? Why have I never seen it before?" Andrina glared at Erebus and coldly replied, "None of your business." Ahem. Erebus let out 2 dry laughs in embarrassment. Andre, who was about to ask Erebus about it, tactfully did not pursue the matter. However, he still looked at Andrina with great astonishment. Andrina obviously did not have a good impression of the 2. She only silently followed behind Han Shu and paid them no heed. Brian, there is something fishy about what happened at the Kisa residence today. That youngster, as a member of the Kisa residence, dared to use your medicine to harm others. He must be targeting your celestial pharmacy. He might have been instigated by someone. You must be careful, Andre said after a moment of silence. Yes, this incident is obviously targeting me. I wonder who it is that wants to do this to me. Han Shu nodded. He knew that Gale wouldn't have the guts to do such a thing. Besides, he had no grudge against that youngster. He wouldn't do such a thing for no reason. Have you offended anyone recently? I mean apart from Avery. Avery hasn't been in the City of Shadows recently, and I've been keeping an eye on the Fifth Corps' every move. It shouldn't have anything to do with him. Andre bunched his brows and thought for a moment. He was rather puzzled. Han Shu was taken aback. He stopped moving and pondered for a moment. Suddenly, Han Shu had an idea and said, I've been to the God Swamp Pharmacy. The owner, Stice, wanted to do business with me, but we parted on bad terms. In the banquet hall of that alchemist, I got into an argument with an alchemist named Ghoulie. Could it be that Ghoulie? Phantom City's Ghoulie? Erebus exclaimed softly. Soon after, he shook his head and explained. This Ghoulie has an eccentric temperament. Although she is rather famous in Mirage City, she shouldn't have that much influence in our City of Shadows, right? Someone is trying to tarnish the reputation of my celestial pharmacy. If my celestial pharmacy were to collapse, who in the City of Shadows would benefit the most? Han Shu mumbled to himself with his brows bunched. Suddenly, he bunched his brows and became suspicious of that Stice from the God Swamp Pharmacy. Han Shu had a bad impression of that person. The reason why he didn't want to talk to him was because he felt that this person was too scheming. If something happens to your medicines, the ones who will benefit the most will be the pharmacies in the City of Shadows. You might not have noticed it, but the Celestial Pharmacy's appearance has affected the businesses of all the major pharmacies in the City of Shadows. Among them, the God Swamp Pharmacy has suffered the greatest loss. Andre seemed to have realized something when he heard Han Shu mumbling to himself. Han Shu became even more puzzled after hearing Andre's words. After thinking for a moment, he suddenly put on a smile and said, I will have to trouble you two lords to look into this matter. I believe that you two lords will be able to find the cause of this matter. Don't try to drug us, kid. But I will keep an eye out. Andre replied smilingly. All right, if there's nothing else, I will take my leave. Han Shu knew that Andre would definitely help him. Before he left, he asked, Oh right, how is Carmelita? Don't worry, she has woken up and is recovering well. Andre's smile grew even more gentle when he saw how concerned Han Shu was about Carmelita. Then I am truly relieved. Han Shu waved at the two and left with Andrina. Andre and Erebus did not pursue them. After Han Shu and Andrina were gone, Erebus said in a low voice, That young lady is no pushover. Even I have no confidence in defeating her in a real fight. Andre nodded in agreement and said, I didn't even realize her true strength the last time we fought her. If we hadn't arrived just in time, I'm afraid that Rudrasi would have suffered greatly. What I am most curious about is that youngster Brian. Why is that young lady so dependent on him even though she is so powerful? And from the looks of it, that young lady only listens to him. This is really strange. Erebus bunched his brows. His heart was filled with doubts. We have plenty of time to figure out the situation. Fortunately, that youngster Brian seems to be more inclined towards our family. If that young lady completely listens to him, I believe it won't be a bad thing for us. Andre thought for a moment and said to Erebus, Have you found Avery's whereabouts? Not yet. Erebus shook his head. Keep an eye on the God Swamp Pharmacy. I feel that there's something unusual about Brian. Andre said. Got it. That youngster's medicines are truly miraculous. I will have my men keep an eye on the God Swamp Pharmacy to see if they are behind this. Erebus said smilingly. It seemed that he was very curious about Han Shu. Han Shu did not return to the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. Han Shu became suspicious and immediately began to take action. After Andre's reminder, Han Shu suddenly realized that the rise of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy in the City of Shadows had seriously threatened the original pharmacies in the city. As the largest pharmacy in the City of Shadows, the God Swamp Pharmacy had suffered the heaviest losses. Han Shu knew that they would definitely take action. Stai's invitation to cooperate with Han Shu could be considered as an action taken by the God Swamp Pharmacy. However, Han Shu had flatly refused. Since soft tactics didn't work, it was only natural for them to use a little more forceful means to force Han Shu into submission. As his suspicions grew, Han Shu immediately set his sights on the God Swamp Pharmacy. With the help of the demon generals in the cauldron of myriad demon, Han Shu was blessed with many opportunities to secretly investigate. Soon enough, Han Shu and Andrina arrived at the area where the God Swamp Pharmacy was located. Han Shu found a shadowy area to hide in. After that, Han Shu released his demon generals and flew towards the God Swamp Pharmacy. Huh! What's that? Andrina suddenly let out a soft cry. Her eyes glistened with dazzling radiance. The silhouettes of several demon generals appeared in her pupils. Those demon generals refined by Cauldron Spirit could skillfully transform into their incorporeal forms. When Han Shu released them, he deliberately made them appear incorporeal. Only Han Shu, with his super-strong consciousness, could clearly see the traces of those demon generals. An average person wouldn't be able to detect them at all. Han Shu was careless and forgot about Andrina's mysterious strength. After Andrina let out a soft cry, the few demon generals quickly disappeared from Han Shu's vicinity. At this moment, Andrina's eyes were fixed on Han Shu. She asked in incomparable astonishment, Did those things come out from your body? I saw it clearly. Don't try to hide it. Han Shu felt a headache coming on under Andrina's fiery eyes. What exactly were those things? It's so strange. If we weren't so close to each other, I probably wouldn't have discovered them. How interesting. What exactly were they? Andrina was very interested. She shook Han Shu's arm with both hands and wore an excited face. That's a strange life form. It's a kind of life form on our profound continent. It can be used to gather information. Han Shu explained to Andrina with a bitter face. He thought to himself, I must be careful when I'm with her in the future. This little girl's senses are way too sharp. This life form is so miraculous. It doesn't seem to have a physical body. It's like pure soul energy, and the energy isn't weak at all. By the way, why are they in your body? Are you also a strange life form? Angelina showed great interest in this matter and pestered Han Shu with questions. That's right. Why are they in your body? No, I'm just using a kind of container to store them. I can take them out to gather information when I need it. It's that simple. Don't ask any more questions. I still have things to do, Han Shu hastily replied. He then closed his eyes and pretended to be very busy. He ignored Andrina. The use of demon generals was far more than just gathering information. They could be used for sneak attacks, deployment of formations, assassination, concealment, and many other purposes. The demon generals refined by Cauldron Spirit, in particular, possessed immense strength. They were Han Shu's main helpers. Of course, these were all secrets that Han Shu would definitely keep. He would never tell Andrina about them. Andrina was about to continue asking, but when she saw that Han Shu had even closed his eyes, she knew that Han Shu didn't want to talk about it. However, she became more and more curious about Han Shu. Her gaze when she looked at Han Shu was filled with amazement. The God Swamp Pharmacy was the largest pharmacy in the City of Shadows. Naturally, it was protected by boundaries. However, the God Swamp Pharmacy was just a pharmacy after all. Although it possessed extraordinary strength, it did not dare to show off in the City of Shadows. Therefore, the boundaries they set up were not particularly powerful. Therefore, the demon generals were able to easily sneak in. Han Shuo's demon generals circled around a few buildings in the God Swamp Pharmacy, and discovered that there were entire sets of medicine refining equipment. Many pharmacists were busy using the equipment in their hands to refine strange medicines. There were also some pharmacists of higher status who were arguing in a few rooms with flushed faces. Using his demon general's senses of sight and hearing, Han Shuo discovered that they were merely discussing medicine refining techniques. They did not mention anything about the House of Kisa. One of the demon generals discovered Guli in Mirage City. Due to the gathering of pharmacists, Guli was still residing in the God Swamp Pharmacy. Han Shuo treated Guli as a suspect. His demon general carefully observed Guli's every movement. He saw that Guli had an irritated face. She was flipping through thick medicine refining books and muttering to herself. When the demon general heard what she was muttering, he nearly laughed out loud. It turned out that Guli was flipping through thick medicine refining books in search of the few medicinal ingredients that Han Shuo had casually mentioned in the banquet hall. Those medicinal ingredients weren't something that the people of this universe should know about. Even if they knew about those medicinal ingredients, they wouldn't have given them the same names. Han Shuo had only said those words to annoy Guli. He did not expect that she would be so persistent. Just by looking at the medicine refining books scattered on the ground in Guli's messy hair, Han Shuo knew that Guli had probably been searching through those books for a long time. Guli pulled her hair frantically and screamed like a madman. That kid must be talking nonsense. That's impossible. If those medicinal ingredients really exist, there's no way I wouldn't know about them. He must be lying. He must be a liar. After yelling for a while, Han Shuo thought that Guli would give up on this pointless method. He did not expect that after yelling for a while, she would pull out an even thicker medicine refining book and continue to read it. She lowered her head to look for the medicinal ingredients while cursing him in a low voice. Han Shuo, who originally loathed Guli, was somewhat impressed by her tireless spirit. Guli's character was indeed problematic, but Han Shuo could not help but admire her enthusiasm in studying medicine refining. It was no wonder that she could become the best medicine refining pharmacist in Phantom City. Based on her enthusiasm alone, Han Shuo believed that she must be a real talent. Because of this, Han Shuo immediately excluded Guli from the list of suspects. A crazy woman like her who only knew how to refine medicine shouldn't have so many thoughts to deal with him. Moreover, judging from Guli's appearance, Han Shuo guessed that she had not left this place for a long time. It was impossible for her to have the time to carry out any schemes. After excluding Guli, Han Shuo focused on Stice. However, after searching the God Swamp Pharmacy with his demon generals, they could not find Stice. This made Han Shuo feel a little strange. After thinking for a moment, Han Shuo dispersed his demon generals even more. This time, he no longer searched the obvious buildings but focused on some remote areas where boundaries might appear. 3 secret chambers with powerful boundaries were discovered by the demon generals. 2 of them had relatively weaker defensive boundaries. After hesitating for a moment, Han Shuo carefully controlled the 2 strongest demon generals to barge into the 2 boundaries. Everything went smoothly. The boundaries did not trigger any alarms or counterattacks. As soon as the 2 demon generals entered the 2 secret chambers, Han Shuo was immediately startled by what he saw. Inside one of the boundaries were many frozen organs. Most of those organs belonged to humans. Every single one of them was in good condition. Inside the other boundary were many low gods and base gods with weak strength. Several pharmacists with cold expressions were feeding some of the prisoners medicines that were emitting green smoke. One of the base gods seemed to be unable to withstand the effects of the medicine, and soon turned into a puddle of green blood. Han Shuo was shocked by what he saw in the 2 secret chambers. The methods used in the 2 secret chambers were illegal, especially the experiments on gods. The drugs used were clearly poisons. This was strictly forbidden by all dominions. Han Sho did not expect that the God Swamp Pharmacy would dare to disregard the laws of all dominions and conduct such a thing in the City of Shadows. The two secret chambers with relatively weaker boundaries had already produced such shocking scenes to Han Sho. With that, Han Sho became even more curious about the last secret chamber with the strongest boundary. Furthermore, Han Sho was now very suspicious of the God Swamp Pharmacy. When he thought about the abnormal situation at the house of Kisa, Han Sho suspected that it was because of the poisons that one of the two had died and the other had regressed in strength. "What's wrong?" Andrina's voice suddenly sounded beside Han Sho's ear. Han Sho came to his senses. He turned to look at Andrina beside him, took a deep breath, forced a smile, and said, "Nothing, nothing, you don't look too good. Did you discover something?" Andrina asked in a concerned tone. "I'll tell you later. Don't talk to me for now." Han Sho did not say much and closed his eyes again. No matter what illegal things the God Swamp Pharmacy did, Han Sho could not be bothered to ask. However, judging from the current situation, the God Swamp Pharmacy was the biggest suspect in what happened at the house of Kisa. Therefore, Han Sho had to get to the bottom of the situation. The most powerful demon general arrived at the secret chamber with the strongest defense. The walls of the secret chamber were made of special materials. There were several boundaries on the walls that Han Sho was not familiar with. Han Sho was not confident that the demon general could break through the boundaries and see what was inside. Therefore, he was a little hesitant. I should be discovered. However, I can give it a try. If it doesn't work, I'll retreat immediately. I believe they won't be able to find me anyway, Han Sho thought to himself. After focusing his attention, Han Sho ordered the demon general to enter. The demon general carefully clung to the wall and slowly broke through the boundaries. Only 2/3 of the way through the wall, a force suddenly chased after the demon general. Han Sho was shocked. He immediately understood that the demon general had been detected by the boundaries. However, he did not order the demon general to retreat. Instead, he ordered the demon general to break through the boundaries as fast as he could. Pa pa pa. A series of crisp sounds came from the walls of the secret chamber. The demon general had successfully broken through the boundaries and entered the secret chamber. "Brian, that guy must be someone!" A white-haired old man with a jade-like face ordered Styles, who was kneeling on the ground. Before he could finish his sentence, he immediately noticed the abnormality of the boundaries and shouted. The demon general did not hear anything else. However, based on those few words, Han Sho was sure that what happened at the house of Kisa must have something to do with the two people in the secret chamber. There was no time to inquire about what was going on in the secret chamber. The old man seemed to have sensed the demon general's location. Han Sho ordered the demon general to retreat immediately. As soon as it entered the secret chamber, the demon general immediately received the order. Without any hesitation, it returned at an even faster speed. Anyway, its whereabouts had been exposed, so it was not afraid of making any noise. There was another series of pa 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 sounds. The demon general quickly broke through the boundaries and returned. At this time, the old man in the secret chamber had just gotten up and was about to chase after the demon general. "Let's go!" Han Sho, who was outside, simply grabbed Andrina and quickly left while the God Swamp Pharmacy was in a mess. As soon as the demon general came out of the boundaries, it immediately flew into the sky. The old man seemed to have some misgivings. He looked up at the sky and did not chase after it. His expression was very ugly. Chapter 720. After returning to the secret chamber, Stice immediately asked, "Master, did someone discover the situation here?" "I'm not sure. But something just penetrated the boundary. As for the other two secret chambers, I don't know if they have been discovered as well," the old man replied with uncertainty. "Then what should we do?" Stice was rather flustered. he said anxiously. If the House of Saint learns that we have been doing this behind their backs, we will not be able to escape from their pursuit. What are you panicking for? The old man chided. He slowly sat down, thought for a moment, and instructed. Immediately move all the unclean things out of this place. I need to stay away for a while. Don't worry, even if the disturbance just now was caused by the House of Saint, I believe that they won't act rashly if they can't find any evidence. But according to my estimation, the intruders are definitely not from the House of Saint. Otherwise, they wouldn't have retreated. Based on the usual style of the House of Saint in the City of Shadows, if they were really from the House of Saint, they would have invaded by now. You are right, Master. I will make the preparations right away. Stice heaved a sigh of relief after listening to the old man's analysis. Go. Move all the unclean things out of those secret chambers as fast as you can. Don't alarm those pharmacists who are here to participate in the exchange. The old man nodded. Stice knew that the situation was urgent, and immediately left the secret chamber to deal with the situation in the other secret chambers. At this moment, Ghoulie from Mirage City was clutching her hair in frustration. She threw a thick book on medicine refinement to the side and cursed. That youngster must be spouting nonsense. There are no names of those medicines in the book. He must be lying. Liar! That scoundrel! I am going to find him and ask him. While muttering to herself, Ghoulie left the VIP lounge. She did not care that it was already late at night. Huh! Ghoulie softly cried out. She suddenly discovered that in the dark night, there were hazy shadows shuttling back and forth at high speed in the forbidden areas of the God Swamp Pharmacy. She initially thought that the God Swamp Pharmacy had been attacked by enemies. She was just a pharmacist and her strength was very limited. She was very afraid of death. After observing for a while, she found that the shuttling shadows seemed to be carrying something in several rooms. They seemed to be very anxious. At first, Ghoulie did not pay too much attention to it. She thought that the God Swamp Pharmacy must have purchased some medicinal ingredients. Just as she was about to head to the Celestial Pro Pharmacy to question Han Shuo, she suddenly heard a loud clang as though a glass container had been shattered. Idiot, can't you be a little softer? If you're discovered, none of you will survive. A voice that was deliberately lowered came from that area. Ghoulie was startled and paid attention to it. She cautiously approached the area and immediately smelled the sour smell of medicine. Ghoulie knitted her brows and took 2 deep breaths before her face changed. She hurriedly took out a bottle of potion and swallowed it. It's poison! Ghoulie immediately identified the liquid that had seeped out of the broken glass container. As an old fellow who had been immersed in the art of medicine refinement for many years, although Ghoulie had never studied poisons, she was very sensitive to the smell of some special potions. Ghoulie's curiosity grew even more. However, she did not dare to approach this time. She took out several kinds of potions that she had meticulously refined and cautiously smeared them all over her body, completely concealing her scent. Even the energy waves in her body gradually stabilized. With that, Ghoulie gained some confidence and continued to approach stealthily. It was late at night, and everyone's vision was impaired. Those people were busy dealing with some unclean objects, and did not pay much attention to their surroundings. Furthermore, Ghoulie had used special potions to conceal her scent. Therefore, no one discovered that there was a person hiding in the darkness not far away. When Ghoulie saw clearly what those people were carrying, she was so shocked that she almost cried out. She covered her mouth tightly, and did not dare to look any longer. She slowly retreated. The trafficking of organs and the refinement of poisons were strictly prohibited activities in every dominion. Just like the God Hunters, they were hated by everyone. Ghoulie immediately understood what the God Swamp Pharmacy was doing after she saw what those people were carrying. Generally speaking, those who dared to dabble in these 2 fields would possess extraordinary strength. Once they were discovered, they would not leave anyone alive. Ghoulie was well aware of this. She wisely retreated as soon as she sensed that something was amiss. I can't stay in this place any longer. I didn't expect that the God Swamp Pharmacy, the largest pharmacy in the Darkness Dominion, would dare to commit such atrocities. I must take this opportunity to expose this matter to the public, Ghoulie thought to herself. She retreated to the entrance of the God Swamp Pharmacy. Why are you going out so late at night? The divine guards at the entrance of the God Swamp Pharmacy recognized the eccentric Ghoulie. They were baffled to see her leaving so late at night. I have something to do. If Ghoulie had not witnessed the scene just now, she wouldn't have been so nervous. She might even have arrogantly ignored the divine guards and left with her head held high. But now, due to her guilty conscience, Ghoulie's attitude was poles apart from her usual self. The divine guards found it rather strange. Oh, please be careful, Senior Ghoulie. Although the City of Shadows has always been peaceful, there might be bandits lurking at night. The divine guard did not know what Ghoulie had seen and did not think much of it. He even reminded her out of goodwill. He thought to himself that Ghoulie's temper was pretty good at night. I know. I will. Ghoulie was rather timid and stuttered when she heard the divine guard mention that there might be bandits lurking in the City of Shadows at night. Ghoulie was even more flustered when she heard the divine guard mention that bandits might lurk in the City of Shadows at night. Ghoulie replied stutteringly and hastily. She did not dare to say anything more to the divine guard and hastily left. The God Swamp Pharmacy did not impose too many restrictions on the eccentric pharmacists. The divine guards did not stop Ghoulie from leaving. They were still chatting merrily as they watched Ghoulie leave. They were puzzled as to why Ghoulie was so agreeable today. Wasn't she usually ignoring them? As soon as Ghoulie left the God Swamp Pharmacy, she started running like crazy. The divine guards were even more baffled. Not long after Ghoulie left, a divine guard with a gloomy face walked out of the pharmacy. He came to the door and asked in a low voice, "Did someone leave just now?" "That's right. It's that Ghoulie who got into a big argument with Brian of the Celestial Pro Pharmacy in the banquet hall. That old hag has a very strange temper. But today, she looks very flustered as though she had seen a ghost," replied the divine guards at the door. The person who asked the question did not pay much attention to it at first. But after hearing those words, he seemed to have thought of something. His face suddenly changed and he hastily asked, "Where did she go?" "I think she went to the Saint residence." "What's the matter?" one of the divine guards asked. "No, nothing." The divine guard who asked the question knew what was going on. Without saying anything else, he quickly ran out of the pharmacy and chased after Ghoulie. He thought to himself, "Oh no, that old hag must have seen something. She must have informed the Saint residence about it." His judgment was correct. Ghoulie was indeed planning to do so. Although she had an eccentric temper and was very arrogant, she was still a relatively traditional pharmacist. She was very resistant to the practice of using living people to research poisons. Without giving it much thought, she immediately ran towards the Saint residence based on her memory. However, Ghoulie was, after all, just a pharmacist. She had never really put much effort into her cultivation. Not long after she started running, she heard a low and deep voice behind her. "Stay where you are. You are not allowed to leave the God Swamp Pharmacy today." "Oh no, I must have been discovered." Ghoulie turned pale with fright. Not only did she not stop running, she even ran as fast as she could. She thought to herself, "They must be here to silence me." When the divine guard saw that not only did Ghoulie not stop running, but she also ran even faster, he was certain that she knew what was going on. With that, the killing intent in his heart surged and he decided not to hold back anymore. Fearing that Ghoulie would attract the patrolling divine guards, he flew to the top of a tall building, took out a strange-looking crossbow, and aimed it at Ghoulie. After thinking for a moment, the divine guard smeared some poison on the crossbow. He planned to destroy Ghoulie's body immediately after shooting her. Whoosh! A cold radiance streaked across the night sky. As a pharmacist, Ghoulie was not a god who was good at fighting. When she heard the sound of the crossbow behind her, she was so frightened that she could only run as fast as she could. Poof! The crossbow bolt pierced Ghoulie's left shoulder and sent her flying. By the time she landed on the ground, she was already feeling dizzy. She immediately felt a numbing sensation in her shoulder. Ghoulie's face changed. She thought to herself, I'm done for. The crossbow bolt was smeared with poison. I'm dead for sure. The divine guard who shot the crossbow heaved a sigh of relief. He thought to himself that it was fortunate that he smeared some poison on the crossbow bolt. Otherwise, the wound wouldn't have been fatal. The divine guard did not dare to linger any longer. He landed lightly on the ground and chased after Ghoulie. He planned to destroy her body to prevent the secret of the God Swamp Pharmacy from being exposed. It was at this moment that Han Shaw, who was flying towards the Saint residence with Andrina, suddenly heard the sound of crossbow bolts piercing through the air. Han Shaw was startled for a moment. He thought that the divine guard had been chasing them. A demon general nearby quickly arrived and saw Ghoulie's condition clearly. Poison, poison! Ghoulie murmured in a muddle-headed voice. Her body was so numb that she couldn't move. Han Shaw was alarmed. Through the demon general, he saw a divine guard of the God Swamp Pharmacy chasing after Ghoulie at high speed. It was obvious that he was going to eliminate Ghoulie completely. Based on Ghoulie's explanation and the resolute killing intent of that divine guard, Han Shaw immediately understood that Ghoulie must have known something as well. Otherwise, she wouldn't have said those words, and those from the God Swamp Pharmacy wouldn't have dared to act so presumptuously. Just a moment ago, Han Shaw was worried about how he should explain to Andre and the others about the God Swamp Pharmacy. After all, the secrets of the secret chambers in the God Swamp Pharmacy could only be uncovered by demon generals. If Andre and the others were to ask, Han Shaw wouldn't be able to tell them. But now that Ghoulie was here, Han Shaw felt that he would be less worried if she was the one to tell him. Although Han Shaw didn't like Ghoulie very much, he could make use of her at this moment. Han Shaw immediately decided to save Ghoulie. It was at this moment that the divine guard from the God Swamp Pharmacy arrived beside Ghoulie. He took out a bottle of potion emitting green smoke and was about to pour it on Ghoulie's body. Through the observation of his demon general, Han Shaw knew that the potion emitting green smoke could dissolve a god's body into green water. It was an extremely potent poison. As long as a single drop of the potion was poured on Ghoulie's body, Han Shaw wouldn't be able to save her no matter how powerful he was. Although Han Shaw was quite a distance away from that area, he wasn't completely helpless because there was a demon general there. Old fart, you've got quite the temper. You even yelled at me the last time. Humph, you actually dared to come to the Saint residence to inform? Let's see what you can do when you're reduced to a puddle of blood. That divine guard from the God Swamp Pharmacy seemed to have been treated badly by Ghoulie as well. He muttered to himself and tilted the bottle of potion. All of a sudden, a phantom that resembled a demon hovering in the air suddenly appeared and collided with the green potion bottle. Clang! The bottle fell to the ground. The divine guard was startled by the sudden appearance of the demon general and hastily retreated. Before he could take out his weapon, the demon had already circled around him, baring its fangs and brandishing its claws. If Donna happened to be here at this moment, and saw this strange life form that had appeared in the ninth realm mystical harvester, she might very well suspect Han Shaw. That divine guard was completely clueless about the existence of the demon general. Since physical attacks were ineffective against the demon general, he was flustered. Wah, what are you? What the hell are you? The divine guard cried out in alarm as he defended himself. Most of the demon generals evolved from low gods and Cauldron Spirit were evolved from low gods. None of them could be underestimated. The divine guard had no idea how the demon general attacked, and could only retreat step by step. It was at this moment that Han Shaw was rushing to the divine guard's location. The man from the God Swamp Pharmacy was flustered by the demon generals. Seeing that he could not take advantage of the opportunity to destroy the corpses and erase all evidence, and that there might be divine guards patrolling the area, he did not dare to stay any longer. He hastily retreated before Han Sho could arrive. He thought to himself, Guli has been poisoned. Given the level of poison concocted by the God Swamp Pharmacy, there shouldn't be anyone who can save her. It shouldn't be a problem as long as she dies, right? With that thought in mind, the Divine Guard quickly disappeared. Although the Demon General could keep him occupied, it wouldn't be easy for it to kill him. Therefore, the Divine Guard had no choice but to let him leave. A few minutes after the Divine Guard left, Han Sho arrived at Gu Li's location. Naturally, Andrina also came with him. Gu Li's face had turned green. The poison had invaded her cells. Han Sho sent his demonic yuan into Gu Li's body to investigate. His face slightly changed as he was certain that the God Swamp Pharmacy was behind the incident at the house of Kisa. The poison in Gu Li's body was exactly the same as that of the Divine Guard from the house of Kisa who died after consuming the pill of rejuvenation. Han Sho took out a detoxifying pill, stuffed it into Gu Li's mouth, grabbed her, and hurried to the saint residence. That Divine Guard from the house of Kisa fell into Gu Li's hands after his death. Han Sho couldn't treat him, but Gu Li discovered it in time. A single detoxifying pill was enough to heal her. With the God Swamp Pharmacy exposed, Han Sho believed that they must be thinking of ways to remedy the situation. The sooner Andre learned of the situation, the faster they could control the situation. Han Sho wasn't doing this to help the House of Saint, but for himself. Judging from the current situation, as long as the God Swamp Pharmacy wasn't removed from the City of Shadows, Han Sho's Celestial Pro Pharmacy would be his greatest rival. Judging from this incident, the God Swamp Pharmacy wouldn't let Han Sho off the hook. Since the God Swamp Pharmacy had taken the initiative and threatened his interests, Han Sho naturally had to do everything in his power to completely destroy the God Swamp Pharmacy. After taking the detoxifying pill, Gu Li's breathing gradually stabilized. Han Sho secretly checked her condition with his demonic yuan and discovered that the poison in Gu Li's body was gradually being expelled from her body through her pores. With that, Han Sho finally felt relieved. Why did you save her? Andrina was bewildered. She bunched her brows and asked Han Sho. This woman has been hurling malicious words at you. Based on my understanding of you, it's already a blessing that you didn't take the opportunity to kill her. Why are you willing to save her? She is useful to me alive. Otherwise, we would have to spend a lot of time explaining the situation of the God Swamp Pharmacy to Andre. Andre would also be suspicious of how we discovered the situation there. With her around, everything will be solved. If she wasn't useful to me, I wouldn't even take a second look at her. Han Sho explained. You are indeed a bad guy. Andrina giggled and said while pointing at Han Sho. Good people have short lives, bad people can wreak havoc for thousands of years. Han Sho casually remarked while carrying Gu Li. He then headed straight for the saint residence with Andrina. Who goes there? The Divine Guards of the saint residence were on high alert when they saw Han Sho approaching with a person in his hand in the middle of the night. I am Brian from the Celestial Pro Pharmacy. I am looking for Lord Andre. It's urgent, Han Sho hastily replied. The Divine Guards all knew Han Sho. They admired this young man who had saved Carmelita's life twice. When they heard that Han Sho was in a hurry, one of them immediately said, Come with me, I will take you to Lord Andre. Han Sho was dragging a dying person to the saint residence in the middle of the night. The Divine Guard dared not delay Han Sho's business. Poison, concocting poison. Gu Li, who had consumed an antidote, slowly woke up from her coma. She mumbled vaguely on the way to Andre. She woke up just in time, Han Sho thought as he lowered his head to look at Gu Li, who was still thinking about the poison. He thought to himself, I won't waste any more time. You're tuning into the Phoenix Nights YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.